for it again.
You've gotten in trouble in the past? What happened?
I got in jail a couple times.
But you still do it?
Hell yeah.
You're now listening to the AITB podcast.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of All in the Bag podcast. I'm your host, Myan. The show where I sit down with writers from around the Bay Area and we talk shop. Before I get into the episode, I want to say a couple things. It is February 2025 when this episode is being recorded. January was just a little bit of a mess, so I skipped it. Want to give shout out to the sponsors for this episode. So I got three guys I want to shout out. So first things first, MacArthur Skate Shop. These guys are the best in the world, and this is actually where we're recording the episode today. So I appreciate you guys so much. This is where we had the first All in the Bag art show as well, and I thought that was pretty much a major success. So many of you guys came out, and so grateful for that. Second sponsorship, shout out to Club Ghoul out of Oakland, California. He makes some of the most disgusting, destructive inks I have ever played with, and it is just absolutely amazing what he does. He's an absolute chemist. You can pick up his ink over at Method Made SF, and you can also reach out to him, Club Ghoul 667 on Instagram. And we actually have some gifts for our guests. So we have Billy's Blue. Let me pull out the goodie bag. Billy's Blue, which comes in a chisel tip and is a bluish green marker.
Yeah,
so
nice.
that's for you to catch tags on.
Thank you.
This one is super sick. Clown Piss.
Nasty.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty. So it's red, yellow, but
These are all stainers, huh?
Yeah. So like, make sure you don't get it on your clothes. But as you catch a tag, I believe it's yellow, and then as it dries, it turns red, or vice versa. I've used it before, and it is nasty stuff. And then if they buff it, it'll actually just bleed through the buff.
Yeah, that's a good
And the last one, and this one's really nasty. This is Famine, and so this is acid base, so it's glass etch.
Is it a color?
It's colored etch.
Ooh.
So as you catch the tag on the glass, it'll obviously be like really distinctive, but when they finally come and buff it, it's
got a
acid
trace
etched
of,
into the,
nice.
So that's for you, and you
So
can go
it
ahead
looks like a regular tag, but then it leaves the etch.
Yeah, so put that in a mop, and then obviously
dope.
wear gloves, because that shit will hurt.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Awesome.
shout out
Thank you
to Club Ghoul for giving those gifts and being a sponsor for the show. And then finally, the last sponsorship is me.
Out of your own pockets, huh?
Yeah. No, well, I mean, one, obviously, I do the entire podcast myself, edit and whatnot, and pay the distribution company to get it out. But no, I'm glad to finally announce that after 2 years of fighting a bunch of assholes in court, I won the case. So case has been dropped, and I can go back to sticker printing, which has been something that I've been doing since 2012. So if you need stickers, I have outdoor PVC vinyl printed with UV resistant ink. So these stickers last for years outdoors, and as many colors and custom shapes as you want. So for our guest, got you a bunch of stickers,
that's dope.
little
Thank
pack
you.
that you can
Custom
use.
made.
Yup, custom cut.
That's nice, man. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so yeah, shout out to all the sponsors. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. And then, yeah, as far as my guest on the show, he is an outsider, but he's definitely no pony boy. I'd like to introduce to the show Maseo.
Hey, how you doing?
What's up, man?
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Now, is that how you pronounce it?
Yes, it is. There's
Okay.
been,
I've heard so many different styles.
and I'm okay with whatever, you know. That's one of the things I like that about other people's tags too. I'm like, I don't know if I'm saying this right, but I know
Yeah.
it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I say Maseo. And we'll probably get into it, but I lifted that off of Maceo Parker, like the horn player for James Brown.
Oh, okay.
And I believe the Maceo from De La Soul also was inspired by Maceo
No way.
Parker. Yeah, he spells it Maceo, and that's just too many of the similar shapes. So I just
Sure.
put an S in there, and
Yeah.
called it a day.
Sick, man. Sick.
Yeah.
All right. So, Maceo, you're OSD and
18.
18. That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. Okay. Yeah. You know, it's funny is I always try to do an introduction and shit. And I was going to say, I hella forgot because obviously this morning has been just like super hectic running around. But what I was going to say, yeah, that you're an outsider, definitely no pony boy. And you definitely pity no fools.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Shout
Those
out the
are
A-Team.
Those are the only two crews I've been in for the better part of 20 years or whatever. So
Damn. Okay. Yeah. I see Light fairly regularly.
Yeah.
I'm always constantly bumping
Light's
into
the
him in
homie.
the street.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, shout out Light.
Yeah, Light Dog.
All right, man. Well, so to get into the episode, I always like to start at the beginning, just to kind of break the ice.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get into graffiti? What was, the year, and what was kind of happening around in, your youth to really inspire you to be like, all right, I'm going to pick up a can?
Definitely hip hop, skateboarding. I had a bunch of friends that were also punk rock and metalheads. But I think it's just that hip hop culture, I definitely saw some movies, and like everybody else, I think spray can art.
Okay.
Spray can art and what's the other one? Subway art, right?
Yeah.
Both of those. And
There's
I've heard,
Martha Cooper, right?
yeah,
And,
Martha Cooper and Henry Chalfant did
Yeah.
the spray can art.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I think she was a part of both.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, as a photographer.
Gotcha.
And again, it's the thing I've heard again and again, Tower Records.
Oh, yeah.
We would always make the pilgrimage to Tower Records
Yeah.
to pick up whatever graffiti magazines we could. Like, Can Control was a big one.
Mm-hmm.
On the Go, like all those early ones. Anything I could get my hands on. Like I still have the majority of my collection. I don't have all the early Can Controls, which I'm really bummed on.
Oh, okay.
But I have all the zines and any kind of graffiti magazine that I collected through my San Francisco years. But other than those, like, because I started writing probably 89 or 90.
Oh, okay.
So through the 80s, I was skateboarding a lot, just being a general hoodlum. I've always been like troublesome youth.
Yeah.
My mom, bless her soul, she did all she could to keep me in school, and I did make it through high school and eventually go on to college, but
Yeah.
it's dicey there for a number of years.
Yeah. Ditched a lot.
Yeah,
in
so
between.
there's a lot of hanging out in undesirable places, and there's always graffiti.
Yeah.
If you're on the train tracks, you're behind a building, you're in some parking lot. Skateboarding takes people to those places too.
100%.
You go to the skate spot, there's tags. So somehow it was always in my view. When I think about even earlier than that, my family comes from like Wilmington, LA Harbor area. It's
Okay.
basically I didn't realize until I moved to Oakland for so many years, but it's the Southern California equivalent to Oakland, I think. There's ports. We have the same shipping containers. My dad was a longshoreman.
Oh, no shit.
And Wilmington is predominantly Latino. And
Okay.
it's all, I think, what I think about is the gang graffiti that I saw. There was
okay.
East Side and West Side Wilmas, and that was it.
Wilmas.
And Wilmas.
Yeah.
And just such sick hands. Like,
Yeah.
I recently found a book, and I should have noted the title, but there's somebody that sort of documented that stuff, and specifically that LA Harbor gang graffiti, and it's just so sick. The hands are so good. The letter formations are so nice.
Yeah.
So that must have been in my head somewhere.
Sure.
But it literally started with, a couple of cans of paint out of my stepdad's garage.
Yeah.
Probably some primer with one of those chisel 45-degree tips
Yeah,
or fan tips or whatever.
yeah. That's usually how it starts. Like,
Yeah.
I've heard so many people like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I just stole some cans
There
from a
were some
garage."
cans of paint in the garage, and I went to the train tracks, just cinder block walls, and
Yeah.
I just tried it out, and and then I found, the people that also gravitated towards that.
Right. Was Maseo your first word?
It was.
Oh shit.
And that's the other thing I've been really fortunate about. I'll go into it. I've been busted a couple times, nothing of any serious substance, where I had to change my name, but I've kept the same name.
Damn.
And that's the weird thing. I just I kind of envy people who change their name a lot, or have
really?
or have a bunch of words. I mean, not if it's forced upon you, like if you got a case and you can't write your thing anymore.
Sure.
But it
Just having a
definitely-
side name just for the hell of it.
Yeah, I think it gives you more flexibility of letter formations, and you have more tools in your bag if you can rock all kinds
Yeah,
of letters
for
and they
sure.
look nice. And then sometimes I honestly get bored of the same 5 letters. I'm like, oh man, maybe I should pick up something else. But it's so hard to let go of this thing that you've built up for 20 years or
Yeah.
whatever it is, whatever you're. Even if you've only been writing for 5 years, you've put in a lot of work, and that's the most recognizable. But I do like the secrecy of maybe coming up with a side name. So
Yeah.
I guess maybe if I had one, I wouldn't say.
Yeah. For
But
sure.
no, that is the only thing I've written the whole time, and it's just stuck. You know.
Yeah. You know what's crazy too is, have you ever had to deal with? I mean, because you would obviously know because it's your name, but like someone else that writes your name.
There's macers, and I've seen mace, and you know, when
Because I was gonna say I don't. Now that I'm thinking about it, I've never heard of another Maseo.
There was a macer in San Francisco, and I feel bad. Like when I first got to San Francisco, I was in my early 20s, and I definitely like crossed it out or like wrote over it, and I didn't know anything about that person, you know. And it's not even the fucking same name. Like, it was stupid on my half, and then nothing ever really became of it.
Okay.
I think that person was either not that active or passing through, or maybe adjacent, you know, like maybe it was someone from. I don't know. I mean, someone on here is going to know. Yeah. But I've never really tried to engage actively in any beefs. And when I think about that, that was just like a youthful ego thing. I was like, I don't need to do that at all. There's no.
Yeah, when you're a kid, you got a chip on your
yeah,
shoulder.
And I was new. It's being in San Francisco. I was new to town and stuff. So there's a lot of. I mean, I'll get into that as we get to San Francisco. But yeah, where I started, I'm from Wilmington. Lived in Long Beach. Okay. Moved just continually further south. By the time I was in middle school, I was in Huntington Beach. Okay. Which was like a complete culture shock to me.
That's the OC, right?
Yeah. It's behind the orange curtain. This is like late 80s, early 90s. Very conservative compared to anything that I had grown up with.
Oh,
like, in Long Beach, I was in school with black kids, Asian kids. Like, one of my best friends was like a really traditional Hasidic Jew. Couldn't play on certain days. Like, I was, around all these different cultures. And then, which I think ultimately made me more rebellious and want to break the law and fuck shit up, is that I moved to this predominantly white, conservative, Christian community. And I was like, fuck that. I'm going to fucking destroy shit. Which was cool. I mean, it definitely added fuel to the fire. But and then I was fortunate enough to meet some other people that wrote, some from Costa Mesa, from just the surrounding cities mostly. I was adjacent to Westminster. I lived right on the border of Westminster and Huntington Beach, and that Westminster was a little more grimy, and so it had more graffiti. And fortunately for me, there's train tracks that ran through there. There's a naval base between Huntington Beach and Long Beach. Yeah. And we always heard rumors that like that shit's super hot because it's federal property, but like, I don't know. When you're a kid, you jump whatever fence.
Do you think also at the time it was like not really something that was like they weren't hip to it, you know?
The community at large didn't know what was going on or even notice it that much because it wasn't crushed or anything. It was as a young kid seeking out graffiti and looking for it, you look under the bridges, like you mentioned being a tunnel rat. Like there were tunnels, there were drainage ditches, there were places where graffiti popped up, and we just gravitated towards that.
Now, when you were in this area, were you doing like track sides, or were you actually painting trains?
Track sides. There was no. I don't even think those. Well, I lived there. Those trains were very inactive. There was like every once in a while something that went into the naval base, but there was no layups around there. I mean, there are in Orange County, but not immediately where I lived. And at this age, I just had a bicycle and a skateboard. So I was just trying to hit up whatever I could in my immediate area.
Okay. Word. Yeah. All right. And so did you... A-Team and OSD, is that SoCal?
Yeah, originally. So that's one of the people I met. I met Jehu, who's still to this day like my brother and one of my best friends. He and Prey, who at the time I think was BTP, started OSD together. Okay. And I had to ask him. I think we probably met around 91 or 92. Oh, okay. And I think the crew started... Oh, no. Okay, so... I'm getting ahead of myself. There was another crew before that, both Jehu and I were in, called NBA, and it was just a bunch of little kids. I mean, we were kids. Yeah.
What it stood for?
I think it was Nothing But Art. This guy Dave Adams. He actually has a really good. He's passed. R.I.P. to Dave Adams, and he used to write IKEA, and it wasn't like the store brand. He threw like a Y in there somewhere. I don't exactly remember. It was so long ago. Huh. But he was a real artsy dude. He ended up going to Cal Arts, and he was into like outdoor installations. Like he did some fabric hangs with like colors or patterns on like across the freeways and stuff. Like instead of bombing heavens and stuff, he was doing like art installations.
Oh.
That was a little bit later, but even when we met him, he was a pretty arty kid. So him, me, Jehu, there was a couple other people. Eventually, we had some sort of moral disagreement with a person in the crew, and when Jehu decided he was out and couldn't be a part of that anymore, I went with him. I was like, he's always been my right-hand man and my dude, and I was like, well, if you're not cool with what's happening, I'm fucking out too. So
Sick.
and I was still friends with Dave, and actually somebody in recent years sent me news of his passing, and I was pretty bummed. And then I think through listening to the podcast, I didn't even know Flickr was still a thing. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I had a Flickr page, and the same thing I think I've heard other guests say is I've lost the password. I don't even know what email it goes to.
Yeah.
And if you search on, there's a lot of stuff that I posted that's Maseo stuff on there, but I have no access to those accounts anymore.
Gotcha.
So I actually thought about starting another one because,
Dude, it's back. You know what? I try to be as humble as I can and not be a cocky person, but I feel like I don't know if I can say this, but like I feel like I've single-handedly brought back Flickr here in the Bay Area.
I hope so.
Because I constantly push it, and I've had many DMs from kids being like, "Yo, I started one because of your podcast," and then they follow me, and then I'm like, "Oh, damn, they're actually like actively flicking, actively uploading," you know? And
yeah, I mean, I like to see it. It gets me inspired, and I didn't know. I mean, I've seen flicks of things that I've painted that I don't have flicks of, or that
sick,
or that the posted flick is better than the quality of the one that I have.
Yeah.
And I always tried to take film photo. I mean, at the time there was no digital, or the digital was really shitty.
Yeah.
Or
2 megapixels and shit.
Or it's gotten lost through technology upgrades.
Yeah,
I don't know where that shit is. But
crashed hard drives. I've heard that all too.
But all the hard copies, all the film photos I have, I still have a huge archive. And
oh, really?
It's funny. There was a point where I was almost ready to give up film, and I think I sent some of my slide film to a homie who's a photographer, and I thought, and he did zines. Tunks. He's also a crewmate. And I thought, maybe he'll do something with them. And I was going through moves, and I thought, like, man, all these fucking photos and all these negatives and shit, like, do I really want this stuff? And I'm glad I kept them. Yeah. But I did give some stuff away. In fact, he hit me up. He was, like, concerned about, he's like, are you okay? Is everything all right with you? Like, are you doing, like, he was doing a check-in because he's like, why are you getting rid of these fucking hard copy slides? And I was like, I don't know, maybe he'll use them. And they were of a lot of interiors. I'd like to talk about this later too, but like of abandoned stuff. Like there was an automotive factory in San Francisco that we used to paint a lot. Grain silos, PG&E. Yeah. And it was almost all interior shots that I shot with film. So some of them might be low light, but I'm kind of curious what's on that now. I still have a lot of that stuff, but I've also been talking to.
You got to get those like scanned, man. Like
I
know that's a huge project to do, you know, but like if you were to be able to scan those, a lot of that low light you could essentially kind of like fix in Photoshop and kind of bring back.
I should. I did a zine a number of years ago when I was in San Francisco called Vestige, and I did maybe 3 issues or 4, and I actually have a file folder with 5, and I've never put it together. But I have a lot of files. The dude who's doing Blasphemy, it's a really great black and white zine. Yeah. He's talked to me recently about.
Am I tripping? Is that Defy?
No, but it is Lords. It's it's gonna. I'm on.
No, it's not West, right?
Yes, it's West.
Okay,
it's
yeah,
West.
it is. I was gonna say I know. Yeah, Wesk is just the fucking man. Yeah. I mean, I've been a huge fan of Wesk for many years, and then we were at the Letterform Archive, Zine Mart or Zine Fest or whatever, and he was selling them, and I got one. It is really good.
It's what I like. It's when I did mine, they were all Xerox. It was like Kinko's was a thing. Like many people, I finessed a Kinko's hookup, like so I can go and make as many as I wanted, and so mine were always scissors and glue and like
8.5 and 11s turned in halfway,
black and white. Yeah, and it taught me a lot about making zines and high contrast photos. And I always thought if a piece was dope in full color, it should look good in black and gray. Like if everything's right, if your borders, if your outline's strong and you have a good 3D and everything has the right values, it doesn't matter if it's
black and white. I completely agree. Yeah. I've actually had this conversation with a bunch of kids because one thing that I always talk about is grayscale. You know, similar like what you're saying is you know, when you have the right contrast, when I've like tried to like kind of put this into, you know, some of the kids that I paint with in their heads of like color theory, you know, and like warms and hots and, you know, whatnot, and like how a green can be hot or cold, you know, temperatures or whatever. And, you know, like I like show them the color wheel and I'm like, see how you pick this color. Okay. The opposite should be contrasting this. And then, you know, and then when we're done painting, I'll take a picture of it and throw it in black and white. And I was like, look at this. Now look at it in grayscale and see how contrasting it is. Cause now you're taking away the colors. See how that muddled, like now your fill looks like a white fill because you picked very similar colors in your, and then they're like, what the fuck? And I'm like,
it's a trip.
I'm like, you don't see it when you're painting it, but your eye, the way it interprets it, is definitely a thing. And so I got to give all that to Steiner, because Steiner's like a fucking autistic artist that has like just completely changed the way I paint, and I'm really grateful for him to teach me that. So now I try to push that, but I completely agree with what you're saying.
And that's, I mean, for me, that's art school stuff. I was always interested in art, like from the time I was in grade school. When my folks moved out of their house, they had a bunch of cardboard boxes, and I actually got a lot of dope stuff back. I didn't know that still existed. I had like boxes of Star Wars toys. Actually, we talked about Diet earlier. I know he's a bit of a collector and like into figures and stuff like that. I had like,
well, wasn't he doing stuff with like Super 7, if I'm not mistaken? Okay.
So, and this was a number of years ago. My parents had basically moved out of the house that we grew up in, and you know, all the kids were out of the house, and they're like, oh, we're gonna move and do our own thing. And in the rafters of the garage, there were boxes of Star Wars toys, there was G.I. Joes, and there was a bunch of art and stuff that I'd done. And like,
I bet you some of that stuff's worth some stuff now.
Oh yeah, this figure. I mean, well, that's the thing. So I opened up this box of G.I. Joes, and you know, they're held together with rubber bands in the middle. They're all in pieces, just torsos and fucking and legs and shit. And I sent a picture to Diet, and I was like, "Are you interested in this?" He's like, "Oh fuck yeah, send that shit here." And I just gave it to him, and I swear to God, like 3 days or 4 days later, he bounced me back of a photo, all cleaned up, rubber bands all replaced, all laid out. He had like, I don't know, 25, 30 fucking G.I. Joe. So I was like, all right, someone's into them. And same with the Star Wars. I gave them to people I know whose kids were currently into Star Wars or whatever. It's like,
well, a lot of that, dude. I mean, you can do like resin casting and do like repops, you know, and like you can do like acrylic versions and stuff like that are like see through, and that goes for bread.
I wanted to give that shit to somebody who was into that, you know. It's like, I got so many hobbies and interests and stupid shit that I do. You mentioned a little bit about the fucking tism a second ago, and I think that like
tism,
I am a big, so that's another thing. And you asked me about it kind of leads me to this another thing. When you asked me about influences early, I've always been a bit of a bookworm and wanting to know and like seek knowledge and read and figure it out. And one of the things that's super interesting to me about graffiti is the social aspect of it, and a little bit of the psychology and the social behavior thing, because one of the early books that I found was there's two. One of them is called Getting Up. It's a lesser known book. It's by this guy Craig Castleman. It came out in '82, so it's old. It's got like late '70s and early '80s New York shit, and it's dope. It's got like a whole page with list of crews, like of the time. So just all these 3-letter abbreviations and just sick crew names. And then it has like interviews with Lee and all these black and white photos of trains and they break it down. They're like, this is what a throw up is. This is what beef is, you know. And for the '82, I mean, they were in it. That was like happening. But then you figure there's amount of time for writing and publishing. That shit was probably gathered up in the late '70s. And then I think a lot later there's a book called Bomb the Suburbs. And it's a bit of a political manifesto thing about like kind of what we were talking about, like fucking up shit for suburban folks, you know, like so many times graffiti's inner cities and I don't know, kind of shaking up those little caged communities and stuff.
Like, oh, that doesn't happen here. Like, nah, man.
But I forgot what we were talking about before I went off on the book tangent. Maybe color theory or art stuff?
We were talking about art stuff for a little bit. See,
this happens, right?
Well, the tism and the ADHD.
Oh, the tism. Okay, so that's the thing that I think about a lot. Like when I actually think about my cognitive brain function and like I know that I have a little bit of dyslexia. Like I commonly will flip letters, and it's funny because it doesn't happen in graffiti, but it happens in regular writing and
oh, interesting.
And I noticed it one time when I was working the register at a job. I would flip digits. Like if the total was $20.74, I would tell them 47 cents when I'm looking at it and I know what it is. And I do it in writing sometimes when writing words. And I actually think that sometimes when I see other people's tags and other people's written words, I have a harder time pronouncing it or coming up what I think it is because of like some kind of weird learning disability that went.
Yeah. So dyslexia is where you mix letters. There's actually another. I need to go into fucking.
But I think that happened, like, of my generation particularly, there was not a lot of diagnosis. Like, I feel like now everybody's got
dyscalculia,
and that's like, transposing.
I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but that is it affects your ability with numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My wife always ribs me and gives me a hard time about me being like a hyper focused, intense motherfucker when it comes to a project or a thing. Like,
yeah.
And I used to do it back in the day, like when
you're locked in, you're locked in.
Yeah. When I lived in San Francisco, I would sit down on the floor with those fucking C-line labels, and like I would fill up every floor space with them. And I'd go rack a bunch, as many packages as I could, and then I would tag them all at once. And it was like a weird fixation. I was so
you couldn't
locked
do like
in.
20.
No, I had to do like 300 at a time. Like, and I would, and then I'd have like hundreds, and I'd be like, all right. And then once all those done, I'll do it again. So I would constantly get locked, and I think it's the habitual nature of graffiti really either creates that in your mind, or people that already have that are drawn to it. You know, it's that repetition.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's how you get to be.
I mean, it's addicting as hell. You know, it's just
addicting.
You do the same tag over and over and over and over.
And addictive personalities too. Like now that I'm an older guy and I talk to other people, like in my job, I talk to a lot of tradesmen, sometimes police, sometimes military. Mm-hmm. But I think as a graffiti community, and you could probably relate to this, like I know more people that have died that are my age than a lot of like wartime vets. Like I probably a dozen people like off the top of the head that have passed before their time, and some of it's related to the culture of graffiti. You know, there's a lot of drugs, there's a lot of running around, there's a lot of danger, there's a lot of risk.
For sure.
But there's something about that that's incredibly appealing to me, and I don't know if it's. I know I have an addictive personality. I've had that in my past with drugs and alcohol, and then once I got that in order, I feel like it's just the adrenaline. It's just the, like getting over, and that one book I was talking about, it's called. Well, I think that's Espo's, right? The Art of Getting Over. Espo's book.
Yeah.
I love that term and that idea. Like, it's the same with racking. It's like just getting over is such a high.
Oh, it is.
It doesn't even have to be.
It could be the littlest thing, dude.
It could be the littlest thing.
You know, like the other day, just, you know, well, I didn't do this the other day. This was years ago, way past the
I do
stature limitation.
Anything that's in the past, I say the other day, and it's not to like.
Yeah.
Protect myself. It's just that I have a bad memory.
It's to protect myself.
Yeah.
But like, it's the littlest thing, you know. Like, oh, my lady would be like, "Oh, my lips are dry." I'm like, "Okay, cool. I'm gonna go rack some lipstick or not the lip gloss or God damn it, chapstick."
Chapstick. Yeah.
I was like, "Damn, fucking," but you know, rack makeup for her all the time.
That was the thing too. Like racking is such a big part of the culture, and it's not for everybody. I realize, but I think that might even come before graffiti for me. Like I mentioned, like. I was not a picture perfect child or student.
Racking
so
in Wilmas.
I did a lot of just through school too. Like
okay,
I almost got kicked out of school and caused some major incidents a number of times. And I mean, I think it's attention seeking. It's similar. I mean, that's the other thing why I'm really interested in the sociology of graffiti and like what draws certain personalities to it. It's like attention, but it's not, right? Like one of my favorite things is that I grew up reading a lot of comic books and stuff when I was a kid.
Right,
as
right.
I'm sure a lot
Alter
of people
egos.
did. Yes, the alter ego. I was always super huge on that. Like, and it goes to getting over as well. It's like you have fame, but you have anonymity.
Anonymity?
Oh, now you're trying to say it.
Anonymity?
Yeah, well, yeah, you have your secret identity.
right.
And you have the notoriety that comes from the word that you put out there, and hopefully.
Yeah.
And I was always pretty guarded about that. I don't know if that lends itself to keeping the same word for 3 decades or whatever. But
Yeah.
I have always been pretty selective about who I hang out with. I've had like only a couple, 2 or 3 bombing partners or 2 or 3 painting partners regularly.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked about my good friend Jehu and how he maybe in the past has had a bit of paranoia about the law and surveillance and
Yeah.
putting yourself out there. But it's a good way to operate,
Yeah. I mean, it's
moving in silence.
right. I don't think there's anything wrong with,
No,
I think it's better be safe than sorry,
It's
right?
better. Yeah, it's better to err on the safe side and putting yourself out there too hard or flapping your gums too hard or even, coming to a city and blowing it up so hard that all of a sudden you're the number one problem. Like,
Yeah, because then they got to make the example out of you.
well, yeah, I've turned, the longevity has always been something that I've really wanted. And it even comes to like cutty tags. I love catching a tag in some cutty spot that someone's not going to find for years or like 10 years later, it'll still be there. And like,
Yeah.
and-
I love when like you go on a hike and you're just like in the cuttiest area in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And then there's just a random, like, I don't know, say like a piece of wood that's reinforced by like 3 steel poles. And then there's like a whiteout there and you're like, oh, that piece of shit.
And I've always loved those kind of writers. Like
Yeah.
Orphan was that. Like he was also high profile, but then also had the cuttiest.
Oh, man. I mean, to this
whiteout
day.
tag. Yeah, I still find him. I still
Yeah.
find him in the Mission all the time when I'm in the city.
What I loved about Orphan is that he always dropped like it'd be like Orphan and it'd be like 2000007.
Yeah,
I
he was pretty
love
good
that.
about dating them, and even now, like I'll find some 2007s and some stuff around little back alleys of the Mission.
Yeah. Yeah. No, forever
good.
runners.
I don't know. You want to just keep going chronologically, or do you have any other?
No, by all means. I mean, this is your episode. I mean, you got
I do.
you got some binder paper over there.
I
Is it
do. Well,
three punched binder paper.
like I said, I've got a bad memory, and like
No, it's all good. I appreciate that
Some
because
of
most
that-
of the time people are like, and we just wing it, and it's like, yeah, fuck
Well, I listened to a number of episodes in preparation for this, and I do like that you give the guest room to just sort of tell their story. I mean, I do like a Q&A,
Yeah.
like straight up, but then I feel like that is sometimes you get a more short, abbreviated answer if you're just answering one
100%,
specific question.
Because I mean, that's the thing. Like I do listen to other podcasts, and I always listen and I pay attention and kind of what they do, and then you're like, that was really cool. I kind of wish they would elaborate more on that one thing, and
Yeah.
and I that's actually gotten the most feedback I've gotten, and they're like, dude, like I feel like when you do your podcast, I'm like in the room with you hanging out, and I'm like, that's tight.
That's what's cool. It's like a hangout or a conversation, or if you were invited into the room with a couple writers that you didn't really know, and then you get all these gems.
Yeah.
Which
So
is cool.
I always let people do their thing.
Yeah.
I have, when there's a lull, I'm like, oh, okay, let's hit this question,
Yeah.
and that usually sparks another half hour.
Yeah, and it's funny talking about real G's move in silence, and then when we're doing a podcast.
I love that.
But it's like I'm an old man now. I mean, I'm not super active. I try to paint when I can. I catch tags always, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done this in the 90s. I would be like putting myself out there on the line. But
Yeah.
but-
Street sides.
Yeah, I think. I mean, if we're going chronologically.
Well, I am curious. So like, because I believe you told me you moved to San Francisco in 95.
Yeah, 95.
Okay, so just before you're going into San Francisco, you're in Huntington Beach and stuff like that. I'd want to know just a little bit more of the creation of OSD. Like, how did that?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously I know you guys left NBA, but
Yeah, that's something that again, with the bad memory, I liked leading up to this because I made some phone calls. I talked to some homies. I was like, when did we meet? What,
Yeah.
And it was Jehu and Prey who started it.
Okay.
And
So were you like member number 3 of OSD, or like they were just kind of doing their thing, and then you're like,
yeah,
oh,
maybe
what's up?
maybe part of 3 and 4, I think.
Okay.
Because Jehu and I were already homies. I didn't really have. He has a lot more knowledge of like, at the time when we were kids, he knew more about graffiti in general, and I think more about crews and established crews that were outside of our immediate area. I didn't do a lot of traveling at the time. Like I had one older friend that had a car, and we just used his truck, not too similar from the truck out there,
Yeah.
to go skateboarding. We all pile in the back, and we would just go to skate spots.
So Were you, so I mean, obviously you're in the OC and then you have obviously access to this truck. Were you ever going into LA and then
Yes.
painting out there?
And I think that Jay, who had that influence on me, I didn't know that it existed really. Like growing up in Long Beach, there's graffiti there. There's a lot of gang graffiti.
Yeah.
And then moving to Huntington Beach, there's no gang graffiti, but there's graffiti still.
Okay.
And like I said, there's a lot of track sides and stuff. And one of the things that I saw in that area was NASA and another crew called BH. And I think there was one writer that was both NASA BH because I saw them a bunch. And I was like, it just had a style that I was like, what is that? Like, I haven't seen that before. And I think looking back in hindsight, probably a lot of the stuff I saw in Huntington Beach, there was a legal beach wall in Huntington Beach. That was,
okay.
I mean, I never painted there. I thought, even at the time, I thought it was kind of whack. Because you'd see these people that were clearly not writers, really, just kind of trying to experiment on a wall with paint or whatever because it's legal and they can spend all day there or whatever. Yeah. And I think that's the thing from the get-go. I've always been into the illegal aspect of it. I mean, I'll paint legals, but like...
I feel you, though. It's like it's not beneath you, but it's at the same time, you're like, yo, I'm trying to get these ups.
Yeah, and it's the energy of going out there and doing it. Like, I don't want to spend all day at some beach wall with some corny ass people and families like asking me questions and taking photos and shit.
Yeah.
And I don't want to put myself out there like that.
Right,
Like I said, I wouldn't go there and write my word or whatever. But we did start taking trips to LA.
Okay.
And we didn't really paint because we didn't, we're kids. We got to be home by fucking dinner time or like whatever the case may be.
From Huntington Beach, it's like, what, 45 minutes or something like that?
Yeah, 45 minutes, an hour, an hour and a half, depending on what part of LA you go to and the traffic always.
Right.
But that had a huge influence on me, and it was always
I mean,
LA,
shit, dude,
Hollywood. Like, the 90s, CBS...
I was gonna say, dude, like if I'm not mistaken, fucking MTA out there is getting crushed too, right? Super hard.
Mm-hmm. And there was a shop on Melrose called Beat Nonstop. I know it was somebody from CBS. It was like a DJ, hip hop.
Oh yeah.
There was magazines. There was tips.
God, I can't. He passed away, right?
I don't think I even knew at the time who.
Okay. I know exactly what you're talking about. Luckily enough, obviously Steiner's CBS, and I've gotten to know Anger and he and Bleak and. Yeah. When we've hung out with them, they've shared a lot of like old school history, and so I do know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I cannot stress enough the influence of like early CBS and like those alleys, all the alleys behind Melrose. There was like I wrote down like Just 195, Rich One, Tyke. Yeah, all the early AWRs like Mir, Atlas. I skated already past, but I'd seen all the skate memorials.
Sure.
And I'd never seen something like that. I didn't even necessarily want to do it. Like I would never, even to this day, be able to do the kind of stuff Mir does. But seeing it, I was like, oh shit, that is possible. Like I'm still figuring out can control and colors and how to make a piece and all this stuff. And then I see that stuff, and then I was like, holy shit. So that was kind of our mecca, or the place that we would go. And I would take photos. I still have a lot of those photos of these old productions. And we would drive around and look for little yards and stuff. But it was mostly documenting. Like, I didn't do any really writing in LA until I was an adult, I think.
Okay.
Much older.
Was it a motor yard, I think? Was it a prominent?
Motor yard.
Yeah.
And again, Jehu has a lot more connection to these. He has homies that are in LA and those crews. But to me, I was just a pedestrian. I just soaked it up and tried to come back to my little hood and do what I could.
Yeah. So you take big inspiration from that, and you're like, okay, when I get back home,
for sure. And you know, there was no Flickr, there was no Instagram, so it was either the things you saw in the photos you took, or the magazines that you had, and there was only so many magazines, and everybody had the same magazine. So if somebody bit something they saw off of a flick, you knew exactly where it came from. Oh, I've seen that too. Yeah. So, you know, it's absorbing bits of this and bits of that, and be like, oh, I never thought of putting that in my 3D, or, you know, just all the things. Yeah. And then right after high school, I guess maybe I went to community college in that area for a couple of years. And I was always into art. I was studying art still. I moved to San Francisco. That was 95. I moved to go to art school. And at the time, all the things I was interested in were there. I was already interested in getting tattooed. I started getting tattooed when I was underage.
Fire.
Yeah, I mean,
what was your first tattoo?
Oh, goddamn.
Is it covered up now?
Yes. And I tell this a lot in the tattoo world, but
Yeah.
and it's sort of one of those lessons learned. But my first tattoo was my girlfriend's name at 16, and me and the homie hand poked them in each other. So he did my girlfriend's name on me, and I did his
Same
on.
needle?
Yeah, I'm sure it was just like needles wrapped with stream dipped in India ink, just stick and poke. And I don't know why that we fucking, it could have been anything. We did that, and I was 17 probably.
Yeah.
And
I
then,
still have my ex-girlfriend's tattoo on me.
Oh man! And then I don't know what it was. 6 months later or something. At 17, you break up, and
Yeah.
I covered it. But even then, I was like, I heard some dude downtown was tattooing out of his garage, so I went down there and got one. And then
Yeah.
I did that a couple times until I saw real tattoo work, and then I was
then
like,
you're like, oh, I need
shit,
this.
I'm doing this wrong. Like
Yeah.
these are horrible. But anyways, I was always interested in tattoos. So San Francisco had tattoos, San Francisco had skateboarding, and San Francisco had graffiti.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of looked into a school in New York. I think New York was too far and too big. I think in hindsight, fucking New York would have ate me up and spat me out at 21. I mean, I think just knowing my history, like I did a lot of drinking and drugs in San Francisco, and I think New York was too big of a bite to take off at that point in my life. But I landed in San Francisco, and man, I mean,
Did you visit San Francisco prior?
yeah, and it was like skateboarding trips. There was one,
Okay.
And this would kind of date
Hubba
the
Hideout,
year.
EMB, and all those spots.
Yeah, but even before that, we went to, it must have been 93 or 94, we went to San Francisco. Thrasher put on a skateboard contest in the fountain in front of Civic Center.
Oh,
City
shit.
Hall rather, right there in Civic Center. And so it was in there, there was barricades. Like I have a picture of Salman Agha doing like a front side ollie off of a ramp, like right towards me where I was in the crowd. And so San Francisco was also a skateboarding mecca. I was like,
Sure.
man, the hills, China Banks, Hubba Hideout, EMB. What's this? The school with the big gap. It's got big blocks. I can't remember. But anyways, everything about San Francisco, I wanted to be there. So fortunately, I ended up there. And the graffiti was, I mean,
Poppin'.
it made me realize I was toy, and it made me realize that like, this is what I wanted, like a community, like a real community of writers, and everybody's active. And
Did you meet writers on that trip?
no, not the skateboarding trip. I think I was
Okay.
just there for skateboarding. I was probably like catching tags wherever I could.
Sure.
I do remember that we were broke asses, so we couldn't find a place in San Francisco that we could afford to stay in. We didn't have homies here yet. So we got some ghetto ass, it's probably like a fucking cracker hooker motel in Berkeley. Like Berkeley,
Fire.
it was so, like, it was disgusting. But we were fucking skate rats. All we needed to do was find a place to sleep. We probably had like 4 or 5 people to a
You're
single
like
person
super
room.
pumped if you have a pillow.
Yeah, we just drove to the city, did the contest, skated the spots, did the thing. But yeah, I'd visited a couple times. I didn't have any people there yet, but I knew that's where I wanted to be. And when I landed, I was just this art school kid going to art school and like trying to figure it out. And there was nobody in my school, I think, that did graffiti, or if they did have tags on their little drawing boards or their bags, I was like, that's not it either. Like compared to the stuff I was seeing on the street, I just knew I wanted to find the right folks to hang out with. And one of the first people I met, and we weren't homies at the time by far, we were friendly, but I met Gray.
Okay.
Was I think the first person I met in the city. I don't even know if he knows this. I could tell him now, but like it was at Hubba Hideout, and it was at night. Like I was lurking to catch tags on the on the ledge, and he was too. And I think
sick.
he spotted me. He kind of busted me before I saw him. But the thing that struck me, coming from where I came from in Orange County, I didn't know. I had a very limited access to graffiti writers. I knew my friends. I saw the graffiti that was done in LA, but I didn't know those people.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the people that I knew, I think that was what was different about Outsiders, and why Jehu wanted to start that is that we were like we were into hardcore and punk rock and metal. I was really into metal. And that wasn't hip hop. And like, we didn't know that there was graffiti beyond hip hop. I think everything that we'd seen modeled, whether it was New York or And we didn't know the guys that were in CBS and AW and stuff, so I didn't know what they were like as people.
Yeah.
And we just assumed everyone was like a puffy coat, Adidas, shell toe wearing, like b-boy, you know, like
The Kangol hat.
Yeah, everything, because that's what you see in
Right.
those zines and those images, and everyone's pushing the aspects of being a b-boy. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I loved hip hop growing up. I used to have an affinity for all these early '90s hip hop, and that's what I listened to. But we were also into other things, and I think that he felt that was different. And then I met Gray. He had the same haircut he has now.
Yeah.
He had, I think, pink Converse high tops.
Fire.
And in general, a skinny fit, you know, not like baggy pants. And I mean, baggy skateboard shit was a thing then, but I was like, this dude's punk rock or something. Like, he's some kind of alternative to it. And that was pretty enlightening to me. And he was nice to me. Like, he didn't know me from fucking Adam, and I didn't have many tags or anything up in the city. We walked around a little bit and then, you know, said our P's and Q's and like, see you. And I didn't even have a cell phone at the time. So it's like, maybe I'll run into you.
Yeah.
And then gradually I met more and more people. I don't know how, but I ended up in a graffiti house.
I love those, like,
you know, a
there's
room,
always like a
room comes up
house.
in a house, you know, like, and that I also feel really fortunate to live in San Francisco the years that I did. I lived there from 95 to 2006. So all through the 90s, and the whole of my 20s. I think I moved there when I was 21 and maybe moved when I was 31 or 32 or something like that. And yeah, it was good times. I mean, shit was cheap. You know, burritos were like under $10 for a vegetarian burrito. If I could eat one of those a day and be set. You know, I was a fucking poor art school kid on loans and fucking... I blew up a bunch of credit card debt when I lived there because everything... I mean, to me, everything was expensive, and I was a young kid. Was going to school, didn't have a good job, and also trying to fucking do graffiti and skateboard and shit. So,
rack what you can to survive. And
yeah. I was eating one burrito a day at a point and racking things and
a burrito a day.
Yeah, it was the thing. I mean, it's a big thing in A-Team, and I'll talk about that as it's coming up. But like, we've had burrito eating contests and like, and good times. But
that's fire.
But yeah, I met more people, and some of them were just people in my neighborhood. I lived, I used to call it the Tender Knob. I lived above the Tenderloin, but below Knob Hill, like on Sutter between Taylor and Jones or something like that. Okay. And so it was nice up there, but anywhere you wanted to walk, and I would make this decision all the time. I was like, all right, I either walk straight down Jones to get to Market and go straight through the TL, or I walk over to Powell through Civic Center, and it's a little bit nicer. So depending on how late you are or whatever, like, you have two completely different experiences. And I love that shit. I love being in the city.
Well, a block can 100% change.
Oh my God. I lived down there, and like, you could see the tourists change from the seasons as November and December came. There's all these tourists that are from out of town, and like, I'd see these white European families walking on the wrong block in the TL, and sometimes I'd be like, hey, where are you trying to go? Because if you keep walking that way, you're gonna be at Turk and Eddie real quick, and that shit is not nice. Like, I've seen some crazy shit in San Francisco. I remember one time, like, 6th Street has always been like just the most, everything converges. Like, I feel like if there was a geography to it, like 6th Street's the valley where all the fucking craziest shit, that corridor from Market down 6 towards Mission and Soma, like, and, you know, up through the Tenderloin. But I remember one day, it was might have been with Cram or somebody, but on Market, hang a left on 6, from that block, from the corner of Mission to Market, first thing I see is some European tourists in the Audi with the glass blown out of their front seat, and they're like brushing glass off the seat and looking around like all wide-eyed, like deer in the headlights, trying to get their kids in the car. They're just like shook. And I just kind of laugh it off, and they, you know, get in the car and leave. And like half a block later, there's two dudes fighting, like pulling each other's shirts off, throwing punches, like falling down in the dirty ass gutter with like coolant and gutter water and rolling around with our shirts off. And I was like, motherfucker. And then like not a couple buildings later, like a fucking cartoon, a potted plant comes out of like who knows how many stories and smashes on the sidewalk like 10 feet in front of us. And I was like, we need to get the fuck off 6. Like, we walked one block and then like turned and like went down another street. I was like, I don't know if it's a full moon or it's the 1st or the 15th or what's going on, but I love that city energy. I mean, and it's different than LA. Like
90s bipping.
I think being a young kid and not knowing LA, I knew it was dangerous. Like I knew that you couldn't write on certain blocks. Like I had grown up with gangs, and like I was never in a gang. All my uncles and stuff were like cholos and those kind of gangsters, you know. Like I don't know if they're actually affiliated, but I feel like you're in the hood and you're Mexican, you are in khakis and white t-shirts, and it becomes a thing. And that's part of the thing with my family. My mom always wanted to move me up and out of that. She was like, her brothers were knuckleheads. She saw all that fucking drama. Yeah. So that was like part of the reason for our move of constantly, you know, we went from Wilmington to Long Beach to Lakewood to Orange County, and they just kept moving. Like at Huntington Beach, I jumped off and went to San Francisco, but like my mom was like, grew up in some ghetto stuff. And so she's like, I'm up out of here. And you know, God bless her, man. She's done everything she could for me to make sure that I didn't, you know, end up in a gang or on the streets. I mean, I still did a ton of graffiti and got in trouble and got arrested and shit, but
you weren't banging.
It wasn't banging, and it could have been worse. But I had a exposure to that. So I think when we were young, you know, we're still in middle school and high school, we didn't know where to go in LA. And I'd seen some fucking shit there where I was like, all right, you don't misbehave on this block, because it's the dealers or it's the pimps. It's like nobody wants you misbehaving on their shit because they're here making money. Yeah. And when I moved to San Francisco, I saw some of that, and I know real San Francisco heads will like disagree with me, but I never felt unsafe in San Francisco to the degree I knew there was danger in LA. Like, there's gangs, for sure. There's norteños, there's sureños, there's fucking gangsters, and there's dealers, and there's fucking hookers, and there's pimps. But something about San Francisco, everybody kind of stayed in their lane. Like, you didn't get pressed by random gangsters if you weren't fucking around. Like,
you know, I completely agree with you. It's always been, unless you're fucking with someone's money, that's when it's an issue.
In Long Beach, I remember early we would skate handrails and we would go downtown Long Beach and look for ledges and shit. We got pressed by fucking cholos and gangsters all the time for just being there. Yeah. We'd be like, hey man, I need some money for the bus, which means turn out your pockets, I'm taking your
bunny ears, homie.
It's like, what size are those shoes? Like, you know, and we're like, we got to go. Yeah. There was one time in Long Beach where it was the only positive experience I had, where we were skating a handrail and these dudes were like, what are you doing here? Like, what are you doing here? This is our You don't belong here. What are you doing here? And we're like, we're skating that handrail. And they're like, you're doing what the fuck? And I was like, we're jumping up and sliding down. He's like, show me. And
like, do a kickflip,
homie. It was just a little 3-stair, and I like rail slid it or something. And he's like, "Oh, that's fucking." And then they let us go. They let us. Yeah. They were gonna fuck with us, and and maybe, you know.
No, I think for me that was a huge culture shock, because I lived in LA for 4 years, and so like growing up here, like like my cousins are like from Dakota, and so I grew up around like Northerners and stuff like that, and you know, very much exposed to that. And so when I moved to LA, you know, this is the first time I'd ever gotten hit up. Yeah. You know, like in my 20s, just like, you know, and I was wearing an SF hat, and they're like, fuck San Fernando. And I'm like, what?
It's not right, but I hear you.
I was like, what? It's funny that you say Wilmas, because that's the first thing you said. It made me think of. So I worked in Pacoima, and over there it's Pacas. Yeah. It's always Wilmas, Pacas, you know. So I remember this like sad girl, you know. You ever see Mi Vida Loca? Yeah, of course. Yeah, so yeah, like that type of esque of girl was like, yo, what's up, Pacas 13? And I'm like,
so what? I'll tell you a funny story. So like when my dad also, my mom and my dad grew up in Wilmington, and my dad was not a guidance counselor. He was in charge of like the activities at this place called the Wilmington Teen Center. It still exists. It's dope. It fucking keeps kids out of gangs, gets them off the streets. It's basically aftercare.
That's awesome.
It's like an independent boys and girls club. And because he grew up in the neighborhood, he wanted to. They have a fucking boxing ring. They got a gym.
Oh shit.
And they do like these field trips during the summer. So like, my parents had split a long time ago, but I would go see my dad in the summers. And I would get to go on these trips with these fucking gangster kids who'd never been out of Wilmington to like Magic Mountain and Disneyland and the beach. You've never seen fucking cholos on the beach, dude. It's fucking high socks, cut off dickies, wife beaters, and they'll just like take off their socks to go in the water. Yeah. But it was cool because I got to those fools have never been outside of probably their
block.
Yeah, not even the city. They're part of Wilmington.
Yeah.
And but anyways, so my dad, we're like part Native American, part Mexican. So my dad's nickname was Chief. Because, there's always like a puppet. There's always a puppet. There's always a droopy. There's all these
Sleepy.
nicknames.
Yeah,
Snoopy.
yeah,
So
yeah.
hanging around the teen center as a kid, I got nicknamed Weasel. And I don't think I've ever told anybody, or like, maybe I've told like my wife and stuff, but like, because I was this like little skinny kind of shady dude. And like, it's always the thing. Like,
That's the homie
if you're
Weasel.
a Gordo, you're fucking Gordo. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
it's not, those names aren't for nothing, Like, Droopy, you can imagine who Droopy is, and Shadow, and like,
Yeah,
you don't want to
Hispanics
fuck
are like
with, you don't want to
so
fuck with the
fucking-
Shadows.
They're so ruthless when it comes to fucking. Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah. But that being said, like when I moved to San Francisco, I think I always had a little bit of street smarts.
Yeah.
So, you just know where to be and where not to be. But that was the excitement of like lurking tenderloin alleys for the roll down or the box truck or the rooftop or the pits. I've heard a lot of people talk about pits. When I got there in 95, I was like, what is this little mini yard in the middle of the city? And like, I painted a couple daytime, like middle of the day, jump down the pit. And from where I'm in the pit, you could look up and see like a 9-story office building with people fucking doing their shit. And I was like, maybe they see me, but people don't look down. Like, if you've ever painted anything up high, generally people don't look up, and when they're up there, they don't look down. Like, and then, finished a piece or something and jumped out all fucking dirty, like jumped over the plywood fence onto a sidewalk, and there's everyone walking with their fucking briefcases and their suits
like,
going
what
to
the
lunch. Yeah. But the pits are great.
Was there any writers that like stood out to you when you first came in that you were like seeing a lot?
I wish I looked at my flicks before I came. Well, Bless was around. Leapt, I remember. I saw a lot of early Gesso.
Sick.
Gray was doing stuff. Of course, Amaze and Twist and all them. But there was a lot of pieces, and the turnover, unless you had a really good spot and you were pretty respected, there was a lot of turnover. There are certain pieces that didn't get gone over, but and sometimes those spots become like the easy yards where like out of towners will come and paint over shit they don't know better, and then there's a lot of turnover. But also all the abandoned spaces, like there was so many of them at the time, like where I think there's less of them now with all the development. And
Sure.
I lived there through the first .com boom, and we saw that. We saw the empty lots, the pits disappear. It was actually dope. I know I have a couple pieces that got built in between two buildings, like
Sick.
paint a wall, put up a building. I was like, oh man, will they knock that shit down?
One day
One
it'll
day,
resurface.
Chances are the older one I got painted on is the one that's going to get knocked down. But so many people. And then all the little cutty corridors down 3rd Street before the ballpark was there. I would just ride my bike and walk everywhere I could. Like, it's a small city. It's easy to cover.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're not trying to like saturate the Richmond or the Inner Sunset or whatever, if you're talking about like North Beach, downtown, south of Market, Mission, up through that area, that was usually, I feel like, where most of the graffiti got done. There's some stuff that happened in the Castro or like some cutty spots, but like the majority of it was pretty condensed in a easy to access area. So if you live there every day and you're walking around 7 days a week, AM and PM, it's easy to saturate the city with tags and throw-ups and stuff. I mean, it was a good time. I love trucks. For a while, trucks was like, I was always trying to find trucks.
Yeah, box trucks is like such a iconic San Francisco
I think it's an
thing.
iconic San Francisco thing, and the cardboard trucks stacked up to the fucking moon.
Yeah.
With tags all over them. That stuff's good.
Yeah.
And the early stuff that I saw there, I have a flick of it and I've seen it out there. It might have been Howard and 5th, or I think it was 5th. There's a rooftop that spell out the most fucked. It's bubble letters, white fill, kind of pastel bubbles, 3D, and you know, that was like Dean and Doug and those guys, Dean and Doug. I was fortunate enough to meet Doug and sort of become friends with him through Mike Giant.
Okay.
And those dudes were dope. Like, I was not from San Francisco. One of the things that was new to me was that style. Like, I didn't know any bus. I mean, there's dudes that hit up the buses in LA, but it's different. Like, if you know bus flows from San Francisco, I'd never seen anything like that. It's like if you've seen Philly tags for the first time.
Yeah.
I was like, shit. And like, at first I didn't get it. I thought some of it was ugly. And then once I started looking at the forms and the flows, I was like, fuck. I didn't want to do it because that's not me. I'm not from San Francisco. I'm not a bus hopper. But I was like, then my eyes started being open to it. I'd ride the buses and I'd be like, oh shit. Like, you know, it's
Let me
fucking
get
dope.
one in, yeah.
And it's fun to see. It's fun if you're on a bus
And all of
and
a sudden
like
you just see your fucking tag zooming by.
3:00, 3:30, school gets out and all these fucking kids get on the bus. Oh my God, dude. It's like sport. It's so fun, dude.
Yeah.
I've seen, you know, back windows popped out. Any of those electric buses come off the rails and the bus driver's got to get out to go fix it.
Yeah.
It's on. The minute the bus driver leaves, it's on.
You know, it's crazy. Some of the older Muni buses, like even for me, I remember as a kid that like we'd bus hop a little bit. I mean, it's not. I was on the end cusp of that. But if you got yelled at, you could just pop the safety windows and literally jump out of the Muni from the back of the bus.
And a lot of those bus drivers didn't give a fuck. I mean, some of them did. I mean, and I get it. Like, I feel like you should have pride in your job, and that's their fucking rig or that's their bus for the day or whatever. But like, really, I mean, a lot of them didn't care. And this has been said before, but the smell, like Griffin or Marsh or any of these fucking stainers, you know, Candy Inks, like, shit stinks.
Oh, yeah.
And patrons, the bus riders would be pissed. They'd be like,
for sure.
Fucker, I got to sit here to the end of the line smelling that shit.
Yeah.
And you're going to jump off the next stop or get on another bus.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think there was a certain tolerance for graffiti. I mean, I know there was a tolerance for graffiti in those years. And it's funny living through it because I hear people say the golden years, and I don't even know. I feel like 95, I mean, that's mid-90s. You know, I think 95 to 99 is the tail end of that. But I didn't know that was, I mean, nobody knows that's what it's going to be at the time, but I knew that it was something special and different. Like, it didn't feel like other cities I'd been to and other graffiti scenes I had seen or heard about. As a whole, there weren't a lot of tough guys or graffiti gangsters. There wasn't bangers. Yeah. I mean, there are, but like the community people the writers that I knew were not that. There was a variety. It wasn't just hip hop. There's people into everything you can think of. And people were generally pretty accepting. Like, I think
it's definitely a big difference vibe as far as like SoCal, NorCal.
I think the first prickly vibes came when, like, you know, MSK came there and just fucking started kinging shit because locals felt offended or like somehow showed up. Or
did you ever see anything like United Bay?
No, I don't remember that.
I'm trying to remember, but I'll have to do some research on this. But if I'm not mistaken, with MSK and AWR coming into San Francisco and attacking it the way they did.
Oh, the locals started
a crew called United Bay.
Yeah.
You know, just to solely attack.
I could see that.
SoCal.
But I mean, in all aspects, again, I've always been in like the sociology of things. San Francisco has always been a transient city. There's always people coming and going. And I know San Francisco natives are, especially writers, they're down. They have a lot of pride in that, as they should. I met some of those SH guys through A-Team, and Topa, Igni, those guys were probably a big influence in terms of like, oh, this is what San Francisco is, or this is what the style is. Even like the lingo and the fits and stuff, like I didn't really know what I was looking at. It was all new to me when I got here, but
yeah. You know who I saw is thinking of SH, who I see up a lot still is Payrock. I see him constantly getting up.
Yeah. I mean that's the thing. Those guys are born and raised, and they're not. I mean, at least Igni, I know they're not going anywhere. You know.
Yeah.
And hopefully they've had an influence. I mean, that's what I like about the podcast. And I never really thought too much about graffiti podcast. I would listen to a lot of others and be like, man, I'm just listening to some dude who's fucking inhaled too many vapors and it's fucking cashed out, and like they're just talking shit. Like,
Yeah.
But as I get older and I hear it from people, like I tattoo now as a profession I have for a long time.
Yeah.
And I've gotten people come to me who just found out that I am Maseo, and now I do tattoos. And sometimes they won't tell me. I'll just be tattooing, and they're like, "So you used to write?" And I was like, "What?" And then we'll start talking, and they came to me because of that.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, "Oh," and then they'll start gushing over. They'll be like, "Oh, dude, I had such a big influence on you." And then they talk about Nesta and Naka and all these people from San Francisco. And I was like, that's a trip. It's not something I thought of. Like, I was interested in my peers at the time, people that are around or about my same age, but I didn't think about the youngins that were like 8, 9, 10, 11, seeing graffiti on their bus rides to school.
Oh,
and then
for
they
sure.
grow up and want to be big time writers. And it's like, I never thought of that. It's cool. I mean, I think that,
I mean, you know, just to be a fanboy for a second, but like, you for sure are like one of my favorite writers.
That's so funny because I appreciate it. Thank you.
Like when I got into graffiti, you know, I was catching tags, and I started getting into photography after, and when I really started like flicking, you know, I'd catch a bunch of your shit, and it's funny because I'm also a big ass nerd, but there's one that you have. I'm not gonna say the area. Well, I can say it and bleep it out, but it's kind of like you know where the yard is. So a very similar like street area.
I love that area.
Yeah, so you know that tie throwy that's still kind of running on this tiny little wall. It's got to be like high.
I know what you're talking
and it has
about.
the T2B.
Is it the trackside one?
Yeah, exactly. And then you have yours. It's like full color, and then your O has like a spiky mouth character, and
that piece is run and got flicked a lot.
dude, you know what's crazy too is that it's like, I mean, what year you think you did that?
96 or 97.
Holy shit, dude! And it's held up well.
Yeah, I know. I wish I knew what paint I used. I think it's not sun facing.
Yeah,
and it's funny because I've seen that one on Flickr a couple times, and people are like, "Oh, it looks like it's over something." Who did he go over? I went over myself.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because
That's
I
so
painted
funny.
there. So the piece that's under there is older, but I thought it just kind of came off weak. There was something weird about the letters I didn't like.
You're like, I just cut myself.
And I was like, man, it's a good spot. But I went to sort of better myself, hopefully. And some of it's coming through a little bit, but it's still there. The other one people tell me a lot is that grain silo one, the blue and silver.
Yeah.
Which those are the areas I love, man. Like, I love those grain silos. We used to call that PG&E Factory Thunderdome.
Oh, yeah. Still there to this day.
Yeah. And then across the street, I had to look this up. There's a channel that comes in there, and there's a skate park that they've built since.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It was a building that stood directly across that channel. That channel like dead ends or goes into a drainage thing under the 280. So where that comes in from the bay and hits the 280, there used to be a building there. And I remember it having a sign. It was the ABC Automotive Factory, and I think they just made automotive parts.
Okay.
Or they're a big distribution warehouse that stocks stuff.
Sick.
But it was closed, and I think maybe Aqua was the first one that took me there. He was one of my partners. He was like my primary painting partner for a long time during those years where we were looking at the Ghost Yards and Tire Beach and
I was gonna say Tire Beach for
and
sure.
all the
Like
Caltrans,
Caltrans
sides and under freeways and pillars and secret tunnels and like and that one piece that I'm talking about in the silos. That's why I tagged Hardy Boy Mystery Tours, because we were just looking up all the hidden places, all the vacant places. I love that shit. I love an abandoned building. I love rust. I love broken down metal. And that building has a lot of pieces in it.
Yeah.
There's 2 or 3 pieces of mine that are still alive on Flickr that I painted in there. And when I first went, there was a drainage pipe that went all the way up the side of the building. And there was one of those windows that's like got the grating, so each glass panel's only about, I mean, I was a skinny dude to get through there. It was, maybe 10, 12 inches tall. I don't know how wide, but one of the glass panels had busted out. So me and you gotta bleep that. Me and Aqua shimmied up the post, the pole, the drainage pipe, and then through the window. So you're up high. And I was like, shove your bag through first, climb through the window. I think later someone popped open a door, but we got in there pretty early. There was pieces in there, but for a while, that's how you got in. And that place was sketchy. There was big sections of concrete floor that just went 2 or 3 stories down. There were exterior walls that were down so you could just look out over the bay.
Damn.
There was big machinery in there. Like there was something that was like a furnace or something that had a door, like total Freddy Krueger vibes. Like you pull this boiler door open and look in there, and there's some homeless person who's got like a sleeping bag and candles and shit up. So we tried not to disturb that shit.
Yeah.
But like if you were in there after dark, you better have a fucking flashlight or something, because you could take a step and go through the floor, or like end up out of the building real quick.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So seeing all that shit for me was like highly inspiring. And actually, it's funny because one of the, like when I first started this podcast, for sure, like one of the first names that came up was like, could you imagine if one day we got Maseo on this podcast? You know, like, no, I'm serious. And it's like, dude. And obviously I told you about this as well, but like, when I first discovered your tattoo Instagram, and I was like, oh, so this is Maseo. Yeah. You know, I was like, oh shit, this is Cuddy. Yeah. I remember, you know, you posted a sketch of your throwy just like collaged out on a piece of paper.
Oh yeah.
And I jokingly said, can I have that?
That was you. I remember you did tell me that story and I forgot that I sent
and
that.
You said, sure. What's your address? And I was like, there's no way. There's no way I'm about to get a Maseo piece.
It's just a piece of paper. But I appreciate
to you, right? To me, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And so you know, like a week later, I get this thing in the mail and I'm just like, is this it? You know, and like I open it and you gave me stickers, a bunch of handmade stickers. Yeah. You gave me the actual piece, which I still have to this day. You gave me zines.
Oh yeah.
And
do you have the vestige zines?
Yeah. Yeah. And you gave me patches of
cool.
like, you know, old school Americana. There's like a skull with like a lowrider hat.
Oh yeah. I made a couple patches for a while.
Yeah. And I was just like, there's no fucking way this dude just sent me like all this for free.
Well, I also read, it was a skateboarding thing. I read this book called I Only Check the Mail When I'm Certain It's Arrived. And I believe it was some of the creative people behind that were involved with Thrasher.
Okay.
I have to go back and look, but I think it was an illustrator or an artist or a photographer. And essentially it was about mail art. It was just all the weird shit that person had. Like they put a stamp or a number of stamps on a 40 bottle and put a message in a bottle and the shit went through the mail. I mean, this is decades ago, so the mail was maybe a little bit more lax. And it was just about mail correspondence and how, and you know, there's a history of trading hard copies of flicks. And And I've always been into those kind of lineages of like oral traditions and passing things down. And, you know, if you meet an older writer and they like you and you hang out with them, they're going to give you some gems. You know, they're going to teach you how to mix this ink or tell you what the better tip for this is and show you their homemade marker or like, I love that shit. So I was always trying to push that forward a little bit or at least pay it back in some aspects. Because I remember, like, the first time I got put onto Marsh, or, like, I always...
T-grade.
Yeah. And Patrick and Company, that stationary supply store in the city, they got wise to it, but you used to be able to special order it.
Order a pint and shit?
Yeah, we would order a gallon. And we could order a gallon, I remember. But then they got word that what the kids were using it, like, why are these young kids ordering this fucking industrial grade stencil ink? Yeah. And so they wouldn't do it. I remember one of the last times we ordered it and then we actually racked it. Like we ordered it so it was in the building and then we went and got it because they were like trying to take IDs or you need to be over. I mean, I was over 18 by the time I moved to the city, but you know, they were trying to restrict it like they did with Etch Bath after a while. But yeah, I remember the first time someone put me onto that and like how to mix silvers, you know, before Crink was a name brand. And, you know, shoe polish mops. I was, one of the questions that you posed to me is like, well, one of the differences you see in graffiti between now and then, or the changes you've seen. And that's definitely it.
All these companies and compared to the
supply companies. It's like, and there was a period of time where I, you know, I feel like my graffiti career has always had ebbs and flows, and those San Francisco years were definitely the high point. And there was a point where I kind of distanced myself a little bit and stepped away, and I was really focusing on learning the tattoo. And I think it was that time that like that blew up as a thing, companies and an industry of graffiti supplies.
Yeah.
Because I remember coming back and being like, what the fuck are all these tips? Why are there 24 tips? Like, I used to know I'd have a New York thin,
Phantom,
a New York fat, those orange balls. I love the fucking on an orange ball on a fucking Resto.
Yeah.
And I was racking, those caps from oven cleaner and glass cleaner out of Smart and Final and shit. And like,
Smart and Final.
for sure, I'd go in there, pop every top off the can, take every tip, put them back, and line them up so nobody knew.
Yeah.
All those people are gonna be bummed when they get home with their fucking oven cleaner and there's no tip on it. And
Yeah.
the store doesn't know what happened, but I got half a dozen or a dozen fucking fat caps.
Would you clean them in acetone?
Oh, fuck yeah, dude. Those things
Try to
were
make
like...
them last as long as you
Yeah,
could.
because there was no graffiti supply stores. You couldn't go to the Tenderloin and walk into the shop and buy a fucking handful of them.
Yeah.
You might be able to mail order them, but it's going to take a while to get to them,
Yeah.
to you. And I remember one time I painted a truck in... Had to be like the outer Richmond or the Sunset or something, just parked out there at night. And I only had stock caps and stock cans. I think it was red and yellow. And I think that, there's a skill to that. Make it work. Like, if you could do it with stock tips, you could do it with fucking any fancy tip.
Oh, for sure.
And if you could do it with shit automotive paint or fucking 99-cent cans, and you could do it with the fancy stuff. And I was always into making my own markers and, like, figuring it out. I would constantly be looking at mostly stationary stores, which are kind of even a thing of the past now. Like,
Yeah,
there's not
for
that
sure.
many stationary stores. Finding little bingo markers and little fucking
Bingo daubers.
Yeah, teacher supply stores was a good one. And they'd be like, oh, are you a teacher? Do you have an idea? I was like, no, but I want to buy this fucking box of 6 puffy paint, they're dabbers basically, with the little dime-sized tips that I hadn't seen before I couldn't get. And I would stock those things. I was really fortunate to get a job in a hardware store.
Yeah, okay.
And that's what I did before I tattooed or before I apprenticed. And it was dope. It was in West Portal. It's recently closed. I think they closed in December of 2024. It's called Pappenhausen Hardware. It was made and established in like 32 or 36. 36 or 34. It was the same year as the address. It was like 34 West Portal, right at the tunnel opening.
Yeah.
And it's a mom and pop place. It only ever had 2 owners, the original owner and the dude who bought it that I worked for. And it was dope. I've always liked tools and working on shit and learning how to fix shit. And they knew the owner was a pretty young guy. He knew I was a graffiti writer. And he's like, as long as it doesn't affect your work, I don't want... And I was like, I guarantee you no one's going to rack from here. Their paint was never in a cage.
Oh, really?
The whole time. And I was like, no one will rack from here. Like, I'll make sure. And every once in a while, I'd see like some high school kid from the area or whatever, like lurking the aisles and like, and I'd be like, you got to go, dude. Like, or like, what do you need? Like,
Yeah.
And I felt bad being the fucking man or whatever, but I was like,
Yeah.
not for my store, dude. This is my paint supply.
Yeah.
And straight up, like, the owner would let me take shit, any kind of returns, any kind of buff paint for days, any of the mix match colors.
Oh, well, I mean, if he's contributing to the supply, then...
Oh, he'd let me order. I'd get the order cases at cost. So, like, at the time, American Accents and fucking... when
terracotta.
I mean,
and shit like
Krylon
that.
wasn't great then even. I mean, there's...
Yeah.
But, there's certain colors I had, like School Bus Yellow, I always had an affinity for. It used to be better and thicker, like...
Mm-hmm.
And then fucking, Krylon's yellows and
Reformulated
shit
everything,
got watery as fuck. And it was actually the time where I started collecting cans. I had a can collection for a while that eventually sold on eBay when that shit got hot. I was like, it's not worth that much to me. It's worth a lot more to somebody else. But I had like jungle greens and working at the working at the hardware store, I got weird shit. I got a whole case with the labels. It was when they went to, it wasn't paper labels, it was metal. It was painted on the metal. But they did the whole 6-pack upside down. So the labels were upside down. I got one can that wasn't filled. It missed a spot in the line. So it had the straw, had the ball, had the top, but they never filled it with paint or pressed the top on. So it was like a stash can, but it was a legit Krylon can that came from the factory. So it had all this weird shit that I accumulated over the years. And I've always been a collector. And like, eventually, after you move that shit around from house to house, and you're not going to paint with it.
Shit, yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I hear you.
I got rid of that stuff, but that was a hookup for a while, man, being in a hardware store. And we were right by the Muni tunnel. So the funniest thing was there was a dude that worked for Muni, an older black guy who was gay, and he was super fucking cool. And he was some high up manager or like he ran shit like through West Portal. So I started like picking his brain. He didn't know I was a writer. The owner knew I was a writer, but you know, between those three, that information never got to the Muni guy. So I used to pick his brain. I'd be like, "Hey man, I heard there's like fucking motion sensor cameras and shit in the tunnels. Like, is that true?" He's like, "Can't afford that shit." And later there was, but at the time, he's like, "Nah, man, you can walk straight back in there. As long as you don't get hit by a train, like." And I mean, he must have known to some extent that I was asking these weird ass questions, but but he gave me a lot of lowdown on workers and tunnels, and like he's just talking shit. He would talk about, you know, sort of like the union conditions and how it was, how those drivers had it so cush and how much they got paid and all this shit. And I was like, they don't give a fuck about us. They got a good job. Yeah. They're getting paid decent money.
Regardless of what everyone's doing.
They don't care what we're doing.
That paycheck is still coming in. Yeah, 100%.
And those tunnels.
So you were hitting the Judah Tunnel and like all those.
We were walking back behind Safeway. We were doing the Judah Tunnel you could just walk through. But we were also going into between stations and stuff. And like, that was fun. It was, and we'd go, one good story. So the house that I lived in, I was talking about, I moved into a house south of Market with Mike Giant, and there's this other dude who lived there who wrote Delay 23. He was not the Delay that was from the Bay Area. I think he came from, I don't know, he came from somewhere else in the country. He wasn't really, he had done graffiti where he came from, and he painted a little bit in the city, and he put that 23 on his name because he wanted to distinguish himself from another Delay. Yeah. But he wasn't really putting in work. But he was a writer in the sense of like he had black books, and so you know it's one of those houses where a lot of graffiti writers came through. A lot of people stayed with us, slept on the couch. It was fucking mayhem. We tried not to ride all over. We didn't ride all over our old house. We had a studio downstairs. There was a lot of shit down there. It was a cool house. We had one of those times when they got rid of the old big SF Weekly boxes. They used to have the big tall red ones. Oh yeah. With the spring-loaded base, so when you put the papers in there, it went down. Then they changed to the smaller style. And one night, we realized they were cutting all the cables free because they're gonna tip them over, put them in a truck, and replace them. So one night we went and got one, and we had one of those in our bathroom, and it held all the towels and the toilet paper, and it went down. And they had stickers and tags all over it. And then
that's awesome.
We had another roommate who was a Stony Pete. He was actually the leaseholder. Some old, washed-out construction dude who like did speed and fucking drank like a fish, and did like demo and construction. So he was always bringing weird shit home. And one day he brought home those Muni tiles, the yellow ones with the bumps.
Oh shit!
So when when you're getting close to the edge. Yeah. And so we tiled the bathroom in those because you could fucking mop it down. So our bathroom looked like a fucking cross between San Francisco Street and a Muni station.
That's hilarious.
That was a good time. That was like, I lived there for a number of years, and that was solid. The funny thing is, I was friends with Giant for years and years, but we didn't paint together very much.
Oh, okay. How did, at this point, were you already 18?
That happened while I was living there. So,
okay. How'd that come about?
I think just being around town and doing a lot of tags. Lord's Yard was a big thing. And Psycho City was still happening a little bit. Okay. I would go to those places to kind of like get intel and meet people. I said, I always like to be secretive. I always like to keep my identity pretty hidden. Like I knew some writers, but I wasn't a super socialite in terms of like knowing everybody and being able to spot writers on the street. There was my people that I liked and I hung out with. But I like to know. So, if I could go out there and be like, oh, that's so-and-so, he's painting. Like, I like to have more information about other people than people had about me.
Chismoso.
And it's like, yeah, well, I mean, I didn't know. There's so many writers in San Francisco at that time. And like, I mean, A, you don't want to step on the wrong toes. And B,
I mean, it's good to know the lay of the land.
I was trying to find my place in the hierarchy of San Francisco graffiti, Like, I knew that there's fucking people like Twist and KR, and I think for me, Mike Giant was a little bit of access to that. Like, I met a lot of cool writers, but I didn't really go write with them. I only went writing with people that I really knew and trusted and knew how they operated and knew they'd have my back. And if a cop showed up or we got rolled or pressed by someone else, I knew exactly what they were going to do and I could follow suit. Like, I didn't like being with someone who, like, they're going to skirt out and leave me in a pit or, like, leave me fucking stranded. And, like, I would never have beef over somebody like that. Like, when the shit hits the fan, in most cases, it's every man for themselves.
Yeah, 100%.
You can help a homie out.
Of course.
You can fucking, we got to go this way, or give the heads up with enough time. And on the other side of the coin is, I don't want to be with somebody who's so skittish that they're fucking up the flow, like that. I'm trying to get through a throw up and they're like, oh, and I was like, that's nobody, dude. That's not a thing. So it's really,
unless it's a black and white, bro. Shut the fuck up.
And it was important for me to be on that same vibe with somebody, and only then, and it wasn't elitist in my view. Like, I knew that there was a graffiti hierarchy, and meeting Gray early, I knew Josh Mays, and I knew some of those guys, but I also knew that they were not, we were friendly, but we weren't homies. Like, I didn't distrust them, but I couldn't trust them. You know what I mean? Like, and there's a cool kid thing in San Francisco where, like, you get snubbed a little bit if you weren't, like, upper echelon. And so I was always really guarded. I didn't want to put myself out there too far socially with these people and then get fucking snitched on or, like, get entangled in some. And it's the same thing with crews. It's the same reason why I'm only in 2 crews, and those are the crews I've been in since go, is that those are my people, those are my family members, my chosen family. I trust them. I'll put myself on the line for them, but not. And there's a lot of other graffiti writers that I'm cool with and that I love their shit, but I'm not going to jail for them. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like,
no, I hear you.
And that, so it was during that era, I was hanging out and I met Cram, I met Light, I met Icy, and I liked their style. I liked that they were the people that they were. You know, the graffiti, there's certain graffiti that I really like, and there's certain graffiti I don't. And one of the questions you asked was, like, what you would tell, I think it was what you would tell
your 18-year-old self,
18-year-old self. I think there's 2 things. They're 2 separate things. I think one would be leave drugs and alcohol alone. I had a
it fucks up a lot of shit.
I had a significant enough problem with that where I had to do the whole sober thing. I went to AA. There's a point in my life where I thought I definitely didn't think I would hit 30. I thought my 20s was it, and I'm gonna fucking live life to the fullest. I'm gonna do it, like, foot to the floor, and that's all I cared about. And I saw a lot of my fellow writers doing the same. And I saw people get hooked on pills. I saw the evolution of the party crew thing, you know, like.
Oh, yeah.
When the homie Jenks got into Iraq. Okay. That was my first experience with, that's like, I knew kids like that already in San Francisco, but that's like a whole another level of, like, party crew, you know? And, like, I'd seen so many kids get hooked on pills, get hooked on drugs, and just fuck their life up, or put them in situations that they either got arrested or got killed that they wouldn't have been if they weren't fucked up. Yeah. And I remember listening to this other interview. It wasn't graffiti, but it was someone I admire in hip hop, and they said that they were always straight edge. It wasn't really a thing. They weren't into hardcore or straight edge in that sense. They were like, I grew up in an element of danger, and I just always knew that I was the only one looking out for me, and I had to have my head on straight. Mm-hmm. And I thought, fuck, man, I wish someone would have told me that. Yeah. Because and I'll talk about arrests a little bit in San Francisco. I want to talk about the police and, like, what the environment was like in San Francisco when I was doing this. Mm-hmm. But I got arrested twice in close proximity to each other. And both times I was fucked up drunk. Like, to the point where, like, I saw the cop, but my hand didn't stop moving. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, turned my head. I was like, oh, there's a cop. And then 3-second delay, I was like, oh, fuck. And I put my hand down too late, and they're like, come on. Like, we're looking you right in the face. And, like, I got wrapped, like, 2 times like that. I think almost 30 days apart. And it was when I was drinking really heavy. And I got fortunate. By the time I went to court for the second one, the first one hadn't fully been processed. The judge thought it had. She's like, I see you were here less than 30 days ago. And she was fucking pissed. Yeah. And I was like, no, that got dismissed. And she's like, what? And she literally did some paper rattling and, like, she was pissed. She was off. She thought she was going to be able to put me with 2 charges, close proximity.
Yeah.
And kind of make it a more serious charge. And she wasn't able to. I was so, and that was kind of like one of my wake up calls.
Yeah.
Like, dude, you just got caught. And for stupid like marker or pin tags. Like I wasn't even painting the spot. I was just drunk and sloppy.
Yeah.
And the other thing I think I would tell myself is take more photos. I have a really big photo file now, but and take more photos of everything. At the time, there was things that I disliked, styles or maybe just people that I didn't like their vibe. And so I was like, fuck that, I'm not taking a flick of that. And now I wish I had. Like, either because I later appreciated that style, like there's something about it that I found appealing, or it's just, you should document it all. Like, tags, throw up pieces. Like, I'd see a really good piece and be like, nah, that dude's a fucking buster or whatever. Like, or something, you know, like, and not take a photo. And now I wish I did.
Yeah.
No, people will ask me about certain writers, like, oh, do you have this? And I'll be like, I have my shit alphabetized in the file thing.
Damn.
And I'll go look at the letter and be like, yeah, touch of the chism. And I'll go look in the fucking photo file. And I was like, no, I don't have anything. And then I think about it, I was like, oh, yeah, I thought their style was a little weird. Or like, I didn't like the way they did this. And that shit changes and evolves. And sometimes those people are ahead of the curve. Or sometimes your taste change where you can appreciate something that you didn't appreciate before.
No, completely. I agree with you, man. It's you don't know what someone's going to become because everyone's a toy.
That's the other thing too.
Everyone's a toy. Everyone starts somewhere, you know. Like I've brought this up in the podcast before, but like Camel, you know, I met him when he was 13.
Yeah.
You know, like on like a busted ass bicycle, and he's just like, "Hey, you want a sticker?" You know. I mean, I don't know Camel. I just met him that one time when he was 13, and I did not think about him, but I thought, oh, this kid's cute. Yeah, let me get a sticker. I still have that sticker to this day. Now cool. He's the king of the Bay.
That's cool, man.
You know what I'm saying? Like, seriously.
Well, that's the thing that's interesting to see is the trajectory of people's graffiti careers or what they do. Some people come in hot, come to San Francisco or come to a city and like hit it hard and then either get busted or just burn out and then they're done. And then other people are in the slow grind. And then some people have been consistent or had a style since day one. You were asking me about A-Team and how that happened is basically I met those guys and A-Team, they said they're going to have, they didn't say it was an A-Team meeting. They said, because there used to be like writers meetings or hookups or like meets where a bunch of people would bring a black book, smoke a blunt, drink a 40, shoot the shit, just chat it up and, you know, hang out and party. And then maybe a bunch of them will break off and go write that night or whatever. Yeah. So I think IC invited me. He said, you and Giant and Delay should come. We're like, okay. And they put all three of us in A-Team at the same time. They asked us if we wanted to be on. And I was like, yeah, dude, I fucking love hanging out with you dudes. They're fucking cool. And I liked the style. I liked that shit was grimy, you know, light, icy. Cram was from DC. He had like a different flavor and a different thing to add to it. And I really liked those guys. And so, yeah, we got on. And then around that same time, so I mentioned Bus Hoppers, and Aqua's younger brother is Cokes, who later became Jinx.
Oh, okay.
And through, and I mean, like, I have to ask them, but in my mind, they were like 13, 14, 15. They might have been younger, but I don't know. And so they're like the littler kids, and they were bus hoppers, and they had sick bus hopper hands. And at one point during that, there was a meeting where the A-Team head said that we were basically sister crews. Like, they were trying to say anyone who's in ESL is an A-Team and vice versa. Oh, okay. I never hit up ESL because I was like, that I can't represent that the way they do. Like, but we were all friends. So like, that was people like Cokes, who became Jinx, Dayrock, Doja. There's all these bus hopper names and hands that I had seen, and I liked seeing that energy. I was in my early 20s, and they were like teenagers, so they were fucking, and they were city kids. So like, I didn't grow up in the city, but like, they were wild in a way that was a little
wrecking
bit,
shit,
just a little bit different. Yeah, and I liked that energy. If you know Jenks, you know the kind of energy I'm talking about. Like,
Yeah.
it's positive, it's up. He's fucking one of the most talented motherfuckers I know, dude. He always has been. Coke's
Still going
pieces,
strong, yeah.
Jenks pieces, like, and that style came from scraps. Like, he would get, you know, his, Aqua is his older brother, and I would paint with him. He would literally show up, no sketch, no idea, a bunch of scraps. Like, most of the situations, that the shittiest spot on a wall,
Yeah.
the weirdest shape, the weirdest thing, and he would come up with some fucking mania I couldn't even understand what was happening at the time. I was like, what the fuck are those letter formations, and how are you doing that? Like, just the way, if you ever have the opportunity to watch him paint, it's one of those things. There's certain artists, there's certain people who have the finished, polished product in their head, and they just have to make it in reality. Like, they just have to use a tool to get it there, and he's one of those dudes, dude, putting little fucking Victorian houses and all these little things and characters and shit.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, to me, that's like, he's one of those dudes that has one of the most unique styles. He's taken the roots of like wild style and letter formations and organically gone to a place that most people never will. Like, he wasn't biting anybody's style. He wasn't trying to be something. He's just, and if you know his personality, that's like him. Those younger kids were a big influence on me, mostly just the energy and like the creativity. And I saw that a lot in San Francisco. Like, there's characters, there's like street art, which I like characters, like Reminisce. I don't know if you remember, but there was someone that wrote Icon and did candy canes.
Okay, yeah.
There was another person who I think was more of an artist who did these sponge paint dogs.
Oh,
And they were homies with the Vade, so sometimes they would be in the same spot.
It always like a light tan buff, right? With like they just flare out the noses. Yeah.
And that was stuff I didn't ever see in LA or in Southern California.
Yeah.
It was like,
You remember Amuse?
yeah, I Muse. Little.
Did that duck?
I mean, that's the kind of shit you would get clowned on, and if you did a fucking duck in LA. I mean, now there's stuff like that down there, but like,
Sure.
that's not like hard. That's not hard, or that's not like.
Yeah.
Even the horses and the screws, like, I thought that shit was cool, and that the fact that there was a graffiti community that like had room for that and had room for blockbusters and throw ups and everything. I thought it was really cool. But yeah, A-Team's always been solid, and those are the guys, Light and Aqua, that I did all that exploring with. We would just get on Buster bikes and hit the cuts, you know, look for a abandoned factory or a gate or a door we can get open or climb. I mean, there's so many times that I have a funny picture of Aqua just laying belly down in some nasty weeds, like it's somewhere down there in that fucking dog patch area, because we were painting in the daytime and somebody came through and we were just like, just hit the bushes and like waited for a minute, and then they went and it was like, okay, we're good. Because if you get too far out there, you know, like painting Hunter's Point and stuff, then you're getting the sketchy territory. Like,
It can get dicey for sure.
Same thing. It's like certain people don't want you there. I mean, they're not going to call the cops, but you being
They're gonna handle it themselves,
which is sometimes worse. I have a good story about adventures. I know that was one of the questions. Do you remember Shy Girl that would put up stuff? There was a girl that I was dating, and she wanted to try graffiti, which I was like, all right, well, she's a good artist, she's creative, and she did some rollers. There's a flick
Shy
of
girl,
of a roller down that 3rd Street next to like one of the big grays, and she knew a bunch of people. She was she worked at Pearl, which was the fucking plug for a certain number of years, dude.
Yeah.
On Market Street. If it wasn't racking, it was just straight up getting a cart of shit at the register and getting charged like $1 or $2. And
nice.
Yeah, it was great. But she did some stickers, she did some bus stop posters, she did some rollers. But her exit to graffiti was we were walking Lower, it was Lower Haight. And you know, all those projects used to be around there. That neighborhood was not nice. And she didn't know the rules of graffiti. And I heard somebody else say, like, one of the things you would tell someone is like, don't take a civilian or a pedestrian on a graffiti mission.
Yeah.
And this is kind of what happened. So we were walking through some neighborhoods in Lower Haight. Classic Victorian house with a little bay window that kind of juts out into the sidewalk. And she catches a marker tag. She didn't know, like, I don't write on people's houses generally. I don't write on churches. I mean, it's kind of an old school. I don't even know where I got those rules, but like, I don't fuck with mom and pop businesses that much. I mean, I've etched some shit in my day that I probably shouldn't have, and I've scribed some shit that I maybe as an older, more responsible adult I feel guilty about. But at the time, I was like, fuck it, this is graffiti. Yeah. But she wrote on somebody's, basically their fucking window, like the window frame. Yeah. With a mean streak or a whiteout or something. And as she did it, the fucking curtain came open. And we were in Lower Haight, and I was like, fuck. And I was like, come on, we got to go. And sure enough, 3 or 4 people, like, it was a straight up boxing match. Like, she got punched, I got punched. I was doing like the walk backwards and fight because I was like, we got to get out of here. We cannot fight this fight. We got to go. But there was punches thrown. I got hit in the head. I mean, I was just like, you do not go down is what you do. Yeah. Because then you're going to get fucking stomped out. You know? It was like that. And we got back to the apartment and she was shook. I don't think ever been in a fight in her life. Never got punched in the head. You know, everyone always says you got a good plan till you get fucking punched in the mouth or whatever. Like, I think that was it. She was done. She was like, this street life's not for me, which I think is for the best. You know, like, I mean, I'm not a brawler, but, you know, in that situation,
you're not gonna sit there and take it.
We were wrong. We were dead set wrong. They have a right to be pissed off. Like, I mean, you know, someone's writing on my house while I'm sitting there. I'm coming outside, but it's part of the game.
Like you didn't get a bat or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky they just wanted to box about it, you know. And we got the fuck out of there, and you just don't go back to that block for a while because your tags are there, and those people are looking for those tags. So
yeah, for sure.
I had some shit like that. Another good story was, you know, San Francisco's always been known or described as a playground during those times, especially for writers who come from conditions in their city that aren't as lax. And so I had one instance, you know, there was OSDs in San Francisco and there's also OSDs in San Diego and in LA. And so we had some of the Southern California people come up and they were just like, oh, this is graffiti playground. And I was like, man, hold on, I got to live here. Like, you know what I mean? So, and they're just going wild in the middle of the day. We're walking up and down the streets. They're fucking tagging and scribing on everything, our mean streak and everything. Sure. We're walking down. It had to be like Brandon or like one of those South of Market streets because it was one way. I remember that. And somebody was tagging a doorway, and I was standing there with my back to them watching the street, and somebody starts to double park right there, and I was like, gave them a little, you know, whistle or something, and they finished. And normally, you know, civilians I think aren't going to fucking flex or whatever, but you also, you have a sort of intuition or street sense when you're out on the street enough where you're like, this dude is the dude who's going to flex or whatever. I didn't have that, but he was pulling right up to where we were, and he's going to get out of the car. He gets out of the car. He says, that's my brother's business. What the fuck are you guys up to? And he's a big, good-sized dude. These guys immediately, I had my hands in my pockets. I was a lookout. They immediately start hoofing it up the street. I just turn my back to him and start walking away because I was like, I won't fucking do anything. I was just stand here. Dude grabs me by the backpack straps and like tries to flip me around and put me on the wall. And I was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, I didn't do shit. Like, you got the wrong dude. And so we start throwing, like, he's basically trying to hold me. He's going to call the cops or something, right? And I was like, get the fuck off of me. Like, and I push him. There's some fist exchange, and I just get loose. These motherfuckers are a block up the street.
Damn, left you high and dry.
I mean, I think they just thought we were all hoofing, and I was, but he got a hold of me. Yeah. And he's yelling at us up the street, you motherfuckers, blah, 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 blah. Whatever about graffiti, his brother's business, whatever. I was like, it's a fucking coat of paint or whatever, you know? Yeah. And then, since it's one way, we're going against traffic. I see a cop coming towards us. I was like, we got to go. There's 100% chance that motherfucker's going to flag that cop down. That's exactly what he did. So we start hoofing it, make a turn down another one way because it's like it's going to take the cop longer to get this way. Yeah. Go down an alley. Eventually, 2 cars basically pinch from one end of the alley and the other. But everyone I was with is a pretty seasoned graffiti writer, so they're dumping shit in the storm drains as they go. They're dropping mops they're emptying their pockets. So they get us there. They got fucking civilian superhero in the car or whatever. he was like pointing at him stuff, and he's like, you know, they do the cop thing. They separate us. They get everyone's story.
Sure.
I tell him exactly how it went. He can't identify who exactly was doing the tags.
Yeah.
San Francisco cop. This is like, I guess mid-90s, 96, 97. I have a lot of San Francisco cop experiences that were pretty lax at the time. I did get arrested twice, but like I said, I was being sloppy, and those guys were like, really? Like, even one of them was like, really? You could have stopped. Like, and I feel like I got to take you on or whatever. This cop was like, you want to press charges? And I just laughed. I was like, for assault? He's like, yeah, that guy put his hands on you, right? And I was like, yeah, I was just standing there, did nothing. So the cop was like,
on your side.
you want to press charges? I was like, nah, I'm not fucking pressing charges. Like, I don't ever fuck with cops, like, at all. Like, don't call the cops, don't talk to the cops, don't fucking, I'm not suing anybody. I'm not fucking, that's the bitch move to me. Like,
listen.
I'm not calling the cops on anybody. You know, I've heard that shit in writers' things where, like, someone caught a beat down or whatever. It's like,
no,
motherfucker, you're playing the game.
Bro. I 100% agree with you.
You know, like, you're part of it. Like, I don't like cops. I'm always fucking, all cops are bastards, fuck cops. Mm-hmm. It's even got me a little weird in the tattoo shop because, you know, like I said, sometimes we tattoo
their clients
cops,
and stuff like
and
that.
I got a sticker on my shit that's ACAB. but
you gotta put like
I've
that fucking...
always been like, they're doing their job and I'm doing mine. Like, I'm not going to hold the grudges on somebody for fucking arresting me because I know I'm breaking the law. Yeah. And I've been breaking the law and I've been stealing the shit I need to break the law. So I know what the consequences to that are.
Right. You're a grown ass man. You know, you're well aware.
I'm still going to run or whatever the case is. But like, you know, that cop, I was like, all right, you know, he's doing his job to the letter of the law. That dude fucking put his hands on me when he had no... Yeah. He even said, he's like, you can't be a fucking hero. Like, you don't know... Yeah. These kids could have fucking shot you or stabbed you or like... Yeah, 100%. You know, you call us and like... And I was like, yeah, motherfucker. Like, you know, over the cop's back. And we just split. And those guys who were from out of town were like, what the fuck is going on in San Francisco? I was like, listen, that is not going to happen every day. And you need motherfuckers need to cool it down. Like,
yeah, we got lucky on that one, bro.
Yeah. And, you know, some of those LA guys, like, it's the same thing. Like, you know, wearing LA hats and stuff in San Francisco and like... Yeah. You know, walking through the Mission when you see the dude in all fucking 49ers gears with the two long fucking braids down to his waist and the fucking Kill a Hoe gloves on. Yeah. And my dude with the LA hat's like, what's up? And I was like, no, motherfucker, what are you doing? Like, that dude lives here. You do not. Like,
and there's three dudes that are about to get out of another door and just beat the shit out of you.
You know, some people, you know, we got folks from San Diego and LA and like, shit's real territorial. Like, oh, yeah. You're from the north or you're from the south, and like some of those guys have real grimy gang background sort of mentalities. So I was like, listen, you come here, try to be cool with everybody. You don't need to fucking... You're
a tourist here, bro.
You don't need to make waves.
Yeah. But hey, you can take dudes out the hood. You can't take the hood out the dudes, right?
That's so funny. That's what my mom says about me. She said you can take the Mexican out of Wilmington, but you can't take the Wilmington out of the Mexican. Meaning, I mean that. Yeah. I've always found trouble and fucking been into shit, even though she did her best to move me up on out of that, like the Jeffersons or whatever. You know, like moving on up, but you're still gonna fucking act wild. Yeah, I mean, I was really fortunate. I think that. I got arrested those 2 times, both times. Oh, and I want to shout out Presida Eyes. Presida Eyes is one of those spots. I think the woman's name is Susan. Mm-hmm. It's a mural project that's been going in the city forever. Any of those fucking Chicano murals are like these things about San Francisco that you see. She probably had something to do with. And I've done the number of community service hours with her. And,
okay.
And it's actually hella cool. She had, I mean... They had a thing at the time that was like a Wednesday night graffiti night for young kids to come with their black books, and older writers would, I mean, it's usually community service. Yeah. She knew writers, and if you got community service, you knew you could go to her, get your hours knocked back early and do some cool shit. Like, you could be painting graffiti and get your service hours taken off. You could be hitting up Blackwoods with little kids and getting your community, and she would write off two or three times the amount of hours you did, you know. And, you know, she was into art, and she respected graffiti, and, even as an older adult, I got busted. Maybe, and this is a different story, but maybe 8 or 9 years ago, and I went back, and she was still there, and I did my service with her, And we did some cool ass like mosaic tiles.
Sick.
I never cut mosaic tiles or done a mosaic before.
Yeah.
And I got my community service handled. But
Damn.
and that last time, maybe 8 or 9 years ago, I went in there and Jenks was there in the back room. I was like, "What are you doing?" He wasn't doing community service. He's just
Hanging
down
out.
with the community art.
Yeah.
He gets a lot of
No,
murals.
Proceed Eye is still fucking
Yeah.
to this day, right?
Yeah.
Like,
But I didn't really know with that or fuck with it until they helped me out of my charges or taking care of my restitutions. And But the other time, those 2 times I lucked out. There was no graffiti vandal squad at the time,
yeah.
and they weren't.
Do you have to ever deal with like Checkmark Chuck?
Yes, I have a story about that as well.
Okay.
But the first 2 arrests were in close proximity. First one got dismissed. I got some minor misdemeanor fine and hours. And then, that judge wanted to rack him into 2 for the second, but there was a clerical error on which would benefited me. And so again, she just charged me with some fines and hours, and they didn't keep track of anything. They didn't care what I wrote.
Yeah.
They didn't really, none of that. That came later. And then, Chuck Limbert got hired in 2000.
Okay.
Early 2000. He was like a detective on one of the maybe Sunset.
Mm-hmm.
So he knew about graffiti, about the stations and the bus hoppers and shit out there. And what used to happen is they let each substation just deal with their shit. And they weren't talking to each other.
Okay.
And then they decided they wanted to have a task force. There was one officer for each station that reported to Chuck.
Okay.
And he collected all information. And I always think this about Vandal Squad. They get into it. Like he knew putting a buff mark check over shit instead of buffing it clean would piss riders off.
For sure.
Because no one wants to. You'd rather have your shit buff clean than run dist.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. So he was capping fools and keeping track of it. He was kicking ass and taking names or whatever. I'm sure he thought. But he was keeping photo files. And so trying to RICO shit or get people felony charges where you get X amount of property damage, you roll it up into a felony case, you try to get these guys off of graffiti or fuck up their lives, which I think is ridiculous for graffiti. Yeah, man, fuck that guy. And I had already started tattooing. It was probably like 2003. One of the guys from OSD, I'll not say whomst, was doing an OSD pretty straight letter on the corner of Haight and Divisadero. It's a busy corner. It's like there's a liquor store, there's Fuck It Thai, there's an apartment building, and then there's something else here. And that wall has a round wall. So if you paint around the corner, you could see it from all 4 when anyone drives through.
Sick.
And I'm pretty sure he was drunk. He was my partner for a while too. And that was a little more sloppy. I have some funny stories about him and I painting, but he was drunk and he was getting a little sloppy. He was doing his thing. Someone leans out the window and is like, "Hey, what the fuck? You're riding on my house." And he tells them, "Go back inside, motherfucker. I'm going to fucking kill you." So now he's got a threat. He just added one more charge.
Ah, shit.
And says, "Fuck them. They're not going to do shit." And goes back to riding. And they fucking go inside and call the cops.
Yeah.
So he got wrapped. Lucky for him, he got wrapped doing a crew letter and he hadn't put a tag on it yet.
Oh,
so
yeah.
they didn't know who he was. And we didn't know. I think he was painting solo. So he was just absent for 24 or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on with him. He gets out and he goes, "Hey, man, I was just in there." And fucking, it wasn't Chuck, but whoever was part of that thing, he's like, put a photo album in front of me and was showing me all the OSDs. They were showing me Nesta pieces. They were showing me Naka pieces. And they thought I was you. They thought I was Maseo.
Oh, shit.
So they're pointing at your shit, being like, "Is this you? Is this you?" And they kept going. They got a lot of your shit. And I was like, fuck.
Yeah, a whole file on you, bro.
Yeah. And that was towards my end of my career in San Francisco. I was only in the city till 2006.
Okay.
And I just started tattooing.
You said 03 when you're tattooing?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
03 was when I started tattooing. And it was not, and that's a weird balance. I don't know how dudes like Giant and like Revoke get away with having such a public persona and also doing illegals. I mean, Giant not so much, but Revoke, I don't know how much illegal he's doing, but he's painting freights and shit, and like,
Yeah.
everyone knows he's got his face out there, he's got his name out there, and I was never into that. But around the time I started tattooing, tattoo shops put you in connection with also sometimes law enforcement. We had some HA, some outlaw motorcycle club clients. It puts you in touch with some weird shit sometimes. And we had some detective guy, and he was like, "Oh yeah, you might want," talking to me, "you might want to chill it out. I don't work fucking graffiti." I'm like, he's a homicide or something serious. I thought you're doing real cop work or whatever. He's like, "But there's some dudes that got hard-ons for you and your homies, and they know that you now tattoo, and it's a matter of time before they connect, your actual identity with your graffiti." And this is a cop giving me the heads up. Again, another cool cop story. But
like, you get the next tattoo for free.
Yeah, right. Get the discount. But because he knew my boss and he knew I was trying to put together a career or whatever, or do something that wasn't illegal, and I started chilling out a little bit. And like I also, like I had mentioned, I'd done a lot of drugs and a lot of alcohol. I feel like not in graffiti necessarily, but I burned my share of bridges and been a fucking asshole enough around the city for 10 years. Yeah. And I was getting a little tired of San Francisco. I was like, it's easy. I've painted the same spots. I've hit the same out. Like, you walk the same streets, the same back alleys, the same dumpsters, the same fucking spots. I was like,
you need to change your pace.
It's getting a little old. And I don't know. There's some familiarity in it, but then I was like, I felt a little burnout. I felt like the people that I was associating with, not even graffiti, but just in life, were like going nowhere, like working the same fucking like pizza counter job or video store, just getting by, like and that stuff cute, I think, when you're younger. And like I did that, like I fucking slept on couches and fucking was a grimy scumball for a lot of years. But like as I was getting older, I was like, I'm gonna fucking do something and not end up a fucking statistic or and at the time I was sober by that point. I barely but for me, I think drugs and alcohol put me on a pretty heavy depressive trajectory. And seeing a lot of my friends get fucking hooked out on drugs and like OD or die or fucking,
it opens your eyes really quick.
Yeah, it's just, I was bummed. I was like, fuck, man. Like, I mean,
the fast life catches up.
It does, dude. I mean, I was there for Ty. I mean, I wasn't physically there for Ty's death, but I was active and friends with Saber and all these dudes that were homies, and like that was probably the biggest turnaround for me in my brain, to see an 18-year-old kid get fucking killed.
Yeah that shit's hard, man.
I mean, excuse me, I get a little choked up because it's funny too, because we talk about styles. I didn't like Ty. I thought Ty was ugly. I literally thought that shit was ugly and whack. And like, I could tell him, or if I wouldn't, it was nothing. Like that's the thing. Like, I just was. I mean, and the thing was, I grew to appreciate him as a person in that graffiti, like, because so many people, everybody said it. Like, nobody had more heart than Ty. Like, and for a young kid who's a teenager to just be like, fuck it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it every night. And I'm just going to do it. I don't care what people think. I don't care if people think it's ugly. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to be in that spot where people cannot ignore me. And then I was like, all right, like, I get it. I get it.
You're killing it.
And there's the thing where, like, I had a certain aesthetic that I liked, and I admit I was closed-minded to things that were not that. And I like bombers, but I was used to seeing KR throw-ups and felon throw-ups and shit that was like solidly filled, clean outline, maybe like yellow and brown, white and red, chrome and black. And the shit was clean. And the thing that I liked is, like, I know that this person's painting a risky spot, and they're either quick and precise, or they don't give a fuck. They're going to make their shit look clean, and they're going to do it. So for me, a different style of bombing, I respected it. Like, and Ty is just one example, but there's lots of people. You can even say the same thing about Camel. Like, that style's grimy, And as I've seen him become a more established rider in the spots and the fucking shit, I mean, I think Camel's dope. When I first saw Camel, I didn't think it was dope. I was like, I don't know. Because you see a lot of people with like a weird style or an anti-style. And like you said, you don't know where people are going to go or how they're going to develop.
Yeah.
But I was in it deep when Ty got shot, and I knew the spot. I knew the rooftop. The night after, the en masse riders showed up on homie's doorstep.
Yeah.
Like there's photos of it in the paper. I wish I had actual flicks of it, but it was a real bummer. I wasn't into flicking or but all these riders showed up, and they weren't trying to lynch the dude, but they're like, listen, this is who you've fucking pissed off. This is the community of dudes that have that homie's back, and you fucked up. Like, and they want, I mean, it's a bummer that, I mean, I get it that Jonathan's family is Buddhist and they're in mourning and they just lost their son and they didn't want to press charges or they didn't want to press it or whatever. But like, there's a lot of fucking fools out there that were ready to fucking lynch that dude.
Yeah.
And there was cops there and they were all trying to defuse the situation. And I mean, I think it was, I think that was a turning point. I think that was like one of those unifying moments in graffiti where everyone gets it that like, oh, we're putting our lives on the line. And like some of those, you know, I was friends with like Saber and some of the, you remember Odds?
Yeah.
Odds was not at LA. Well, he's Southern California, Santa Barbara.
Dude, he's been killing it lately.
Yeah, I love Odds.
Holy shit.
And as a person, I like him.
I've been wanting to get him on the podcast because every time I bump into him, he's always got great stories.
I love Odds because in those days of San Francisco house parties, he was right there and he was always punk rock. And like, I appreciate him for being himself and being his own.
You follow him on Instagram?
I don't think I do.
Oh, okay. So for anyone that's interested, it's Nose like NOSE_stranger, Nose Stranger, I think. And he'll post a picture from the 90s and then he'll drop like an essay underneath with the story of what it's actually really cool. He's got great stories.
I have to go check that. I remember one time at a house party, he was on crutches, I think, because he had like fucked up his leg or something.
Oh shit.
And I mean, house parties used to be a big thing in San Francisco, and like
I feel like it still kind of is.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny that things happen like those warehouse fires in Oakland or things where there's over capacity places and there's like tragedies, because I was like,
yeah,
that could have been us every Friday and Saturday night. We had fucking so many dumbasses out on fucking these 50, 100-year-old San Francisco balconies fucking rocking beats and jumping up and down and shit.
Yeah.
But we were in some house party and he was in the bathroom or something, and everyone was drunk and fucked up, and someone was like, who's in the bathroom? Like, hurry it up, you know? Someone said it was Odds, and someone said fuck Odds, and he came out of there fucking like, on crutches, who the fuck said that shit? And we're like, man, chill out. Like, we were just talking about the bathroom. He's like, no, someone said fuck Odds out here. And he was like, we had to like escort him out to the front to get some fresh air and be like, dude, everyone's just trying to use the bathroom. Like, I mean, there's so many funny fucking house party graffiti writer stories that I love like that. There was one Halloween when the Castro Halloweens used to go off crazy.
Oh man, those were so good.
When a bunch of graffiti writers were huddled up on the steps in front of the Safeway at Church and Market.
Yeah.
And you know, it's just an epicenter. People are lighting fireworks off in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
All these graffiti writers, they had like a boom box. People were like up rocking and doing fucking breakdancing.
Fire.
And I don't know if people thought it was part of the fucking Halloween, like if they thought this was like a role playing or whatever. I was like, no, this is just Friday night or whatever.
We're just kicking it.
And some poor fucking soul who'd probably spent like, I don't know how many hours, walked by. He was dressed as a muni bus. He had taken like a refrigerator box and made both sides look like a muni box.
Did he get crushed?
Yes. He was wearing it with shoulder straps and he was holding it like this, like walking. And I see him coming and I was like, I don't know who was next to me. I know like the A-teams were there. And
yeah. You're like, we're about to rock this fool.
Skirt was there. Like all these people were there. And I tapped the dude next to me. I was like, check this shit out. And he's walking straight for the crew, and I was just like,
oh man.
And it was funny. His reaction was funny. He was like, It was like a cartoon. He's like, and he grabbed it, and, like, hitched it up and started running, and people are like running after him doing like
one-liners and shit on the fucking,
just like a real bus pulling away. It was
my
so
God.
funny, and we were just laughing like, your costume just got like 100% more legitimate, dude. Like,
Yeah.
it's fucking funny, man. I love that. There's so many stories of just being at the right place at the right time and having some funny fucking adventures. And I mean, I think to me that's what graffiti is about. Like,
Yeah. Castor Halloween was definitely super awesome for a while.
I love getting up in those adventures. Like, I've got adventures about getting stuck in the Muni tunnels, I was stuck on roofs. Like, one time I was painting with Mike Giant and somebody else, and the only picture of the piece I have is me actually in progress of painting it that someone else took. It was real tall and kind of jaggedy. One of the things I got into is, like, if I did a tag or a throw up, it was almost always the same, but I always liked the piece different. I wanted to try different letter styles, and to sometimes I think it was to, like, my disadvantage that I didn't ever really get one particular thing that I was maybe known for, but, like, it was to entertain myself. I wanted to see what I could do. So
Yeah.
I have a lot of weird different styles for pieces, and this one is one. It's probably like a 6 foot tall thing. Each letter went from the ground up, and I was painting in the Muni tunnel, but the only photo I have is in progress because we went down. There was a fenced work grate that you could lift, and it was basically like a stairway that went down, so you can get into the Castro, in between the Castro station and the tunnel that went further out, like towards Twin Peaks.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were painting just off of that. So when the trains pulled out, and there's the ghost stations and shit like that, but we were just painting. We're like, when you pull out before the train gets going so fast, you could see them. And worker train came through and just did a weird stop, lights on, full of workers, and they were between us and the exit. And I think when it happened, I forget who else was there. It was at least 3 or 4 people. Everyone bounced, and I just fucking ran the wrong way. Like, I went tunnel deep instead of towards
The exit.
the exit. So, and just hit out in one of the cubbies. And I was like, these motherfucking workers aren't going nowhere. They're like,
They're chilling.
eating lunch, they're doing something. And I was like, fuck, they're between me and the exit. And I was like, and I walked all the way back to the other station, and then how the fuck am I going to get out? Like, I knew if I walked all the way to Safeway, I could get out, but church.
Yeah.
But I was like, that's fucking miles, dude. Like, so I just stayed put. And those guys got out. I think I did have a cell phone at the time, but cell phones aren't working down there.
Yeah, no.
Little
definitely
fucking
not.
Nokia flip phones, not getting no
Yeah.
bars down there. And
How long did you have to stay out there? In the cubby?
I don't know. It's hard. I don't think I had a watch. I didn't have a cell phone. When you're in a
felt
weird
like
place like
ages,
that,
yeah.
it felt like hours, but I don't know. I mean, and I was crouching down there so long with my paint that when they finally did clear, I got up to go and my fucking legs were asleep. Like,
Oh, man.
I had to, like, limp my way and get blood flowing back to my legs. And then those guys, we waited up there for, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, and we just thought you got wrapped or, like, went the other way. They thought the same thing. I think they even went, we were on bikes or something. They went back to see if I popped up somewhere else. And they're like, couldn't call you. Well, peace out. Like, good luck. Hopefully. And I was living with Giant at the time, so he's like, I'll probably see him back at the crib or whatever.
Yeah.
And he did, but, like, I fucking climbing the fence solo, all fucking defeated out of there, and I didn't finish my piece because at that point,
Yeah.
I was like, I could have, but I was like, fuck, I want to go home now. Like,
Yeah.
it's probably getting gray. Like, the fucking trains are gonna start running again. I don't know how long, but it fucking sucked. And, like, but it's cool. I wouldn't trade anything for that. It was fun. Like, I've heard people, the Judah tunnels were a party. I've heard it said before, but, like, we bring ghetto blasters and 40s and just fucking set up camp, and you could just piece all night. Like,
Yeah.
it was fucking dope.
No, yeah. I've definitely heard some really cool stories of just people kicking it in the Muni.
Yeah, it was really
Muni
dope.
tunnels.
You asked about artists I pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like I'm really out of touch with graffiti lately. We're here in Oakland, and I was saying this is like a couple blocks from where I lived for 10 years.
Well, so you said you moved out of San Francisco in SF.
Yeah, let's go
So
there then.
did you go to Oakland right after?
No. So in 2006, I felt like I was hot. I was about to get wrapped up for a big charge, and, like, this is the time period where, like, I was friends with a lot of KUKs. I saw them get fucking played out with multiple felony cases.
Mm-hmm.
I was friends with Love and Cobra and Abor and those dudes, and I mean, associates. We weren't, like, we were friendly.
Yeah.
We weren't chummy, but like
Yeah.
I didn't paint with them. Like that was their crew thing.
Yeah.
But I also saw people, like I said, I like to stay in the shadows. And, you know, I saw people posting their shit online, on chat forums. Like, this is what I boosted.
Yeah.
This is where I painted. This is, I mean, like, almost timestamps. Like, posting it at 3:30 or 4 a.m. and being like, just hit the spot. And I was like, nope, that's not it, dude. That's not it. I mean, you're going to get, and that's the thing. You can go out big and get a lot of notoriety and get recognized quick, but also everyone else, the property owners and the authorities are going to notice that too. So I was always in it for the long game.
Yeah.
But I saw those guys and you know, like the one who wrote Dead Cat and Love. Love was in school and she had a term paper. They fucking unplugged her computer, took all that. I mean, it's like life altering. You get multiple felony charges. You have to fucking sideline anything you were doing at the moment. You got to fucking lawyer up. That shit's expensive. I mean, even if you get off, it's expensive. And you know, for a person who
imagine getting unplugged during a term paper too.
You know,
it's like that's your like school career that you got to do all over again.
You got to do another semester. You got to pay for that shit. You got to try to get yourself on if you're not going to jail.
Yeah.
And I knew, and like I said, I did a lot to get myself sober because there was times with graffiti. A lot of drinking, a lot of drugs. Do you ever remember there's a bar in the Mission called El Rio? I mean, it's probably still there.
Oh, yeah.
But they did their dollar drink nights.
I love El Rio. You remember the big old Native American dude in the back that would sell the fry bread?
Yeah.
Oh, God, his fry
and
bread
the tamale
was so
lady
good.
and there's so many San Francisco staples, and I'm glad
El Rio's
I did
still
all
there.
that. And if I could drink and do drugs in moderation, I would do it, but I could not. There was that El Rio dollar drinks was like a horrible idea. I don't know whose fucking idea that was. I know they made a little money, but like at $1 a drink, you couldn't have made enough
more than
money.
anything, dude. It's like it's to bring people in, and then they like the vibe. They come kick it more.
I don't know if they knew what chaos they were creating, man. Like, because what would happen is everyone would, and they closed early, so they did know. They closed at like 9:30. They'd be like, drink as many drinks as you can on dollar night, and then get the fuck out of here. You're someone else's problem. And that's exactly what we'd do. A bunch of writers would go there. You're drinking piss poor fucking well liquor.
Yeah. And
shitty beer for $1 as much as you can. 9:30 or 10 or whatever, they'd had an early close. I remember.
Oh my God! And you guys would just go out and crush.
And unmarked. I don't know if they're vandal squad or just unmarked police started knowing.
Oh shit!
That's the spot because this is epicenter, and there's just a fucking shit ton of graffiti radiating from every direction from there. It doesn't take a fucking detective to figure that shit out. One time, and I'm pretty sure it was Jinx. It might have been one of the other younger ESLs, but me and I don't know who was with me, maybe Cram and Light. We were on one side of the street, right? They're on the other side of the street coming out of the bar. I see him catching tags. A big long 14 bus goes by, so it's like a double bus. So it takes a minute so we can see him again. And when we see him again, there's two dudes on him grabbing him and pushing him to the ground. Instinctively, we start hightailing it across the street to get dudes off. We just thought he was being jumped. Yeah. And dude pulls out the fucking chain and because he hears or feels us running up on him. Yeah. And he's like, And we're like, sorry, I was trying to assault an officer. I didn't know, And I forget who it was, but I was like, can we get there? And they're, again, they're doing their job or whatever, but they're like, his bike was locked. Hey, man, can we get the keys for his bicycle? We're going to fucking take his shit. And they were like, all right, here. But we're like,
that's cool.
Wrapped up. I mean, we really thought he was getting jumped. And we're like, oh, shit, we're going to have to fight some dudes. Yeah. And I mean, I'm glad the cop had the wherewithal to identify himself because
he rocked his shit.
A couple seconds later, all of us would have had extra charges. Yeah. But shit like that. And so there was a lot of that. Yeah. There was literally nights, and Gray is one of the people I still keep in contact with because after he left the Bay Area, he started tattooing, and then I knew he was having some problems, so I reached out to him to see how he was doing, and he kind of confided to me what was happening at the time, and he was trying to tattoo, and he wanted to do that, but then he went off radar, and the last I heard was not good. He was like living in the streets. I'm so glad that he's fucking reemerged and is crushing.
Yeah, he's pulled through
and
a lot.
He did a really good podcast where he talks all about it very candidly about his addictions and like I
Yeah.
said I had to get sober. I went to AA and shit, and that interview reminded me of a fucking AA share, and I was like, damn, dude, that's and you know, when you're in that situation and it's fucking life or death, that's the shit people need to hear. And like, I have no problem with graffiti, I have no problem with partying, but like, you got to know your limits and make sure you're not getting involved in some shit that's gonna just dead end your life. Like,
Yeah.
I love graffiti and it is a part of my life, and I feel like it always will be, but like, you got to stay alive. And there were nights there when I went to bed and I was like, I've drank so much and I've taken some fucking, you know, people just hand you pills.
Yeah, you just take whatever.
And then I smoked some weed to try to level it out. Like, there's a couple nights where I was laying in bed, I could feel my heart like jumping in my chest, and I'd be like, all right, I'm going to close my eyes and I fucking hope I open them again. And it was like that point where I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And I was positive I wasn't going to see the end of my, I mean, I was kind of like almost.
Yeah, like, I really hope I wake up tomorrow.
I mean, it's sad, but like, you know, you get to a certain place, and one of the OSDs that I used to write is on self-destruct, and that was real. I think that like, I was like, I'm going to fuck shit up and I'm going to do shit till I can't do it anymore. And eventually, I think fortunately I outgrew that, and I can still do the fuck shit up part, you know, like,
Yeah.
I don't need to be on self-destruct anymore. And like, but I could still be a vandal and have a productive life, you know, like there's a way to do both. And I saw a lot of people not do it. And that's what I really liked about Gray's interview he did recently. He just laid it out there and was like, yeah, I was a fucking addict. I was a fuck up. This is what I did. And I saw a lot of people that aren't around anymore, aren't here to say that they pulled out of the nosedive, you know?
Yeah.
So,
I bought his zine, and it was a lot of like, basically that. I mean,
Yeah.
when I bought his zine, I thought actually it was going to be like a picture zine.
Yeah.
And it was not. It was
written?
literally just 10 pages
That's
of
cool.
essentially what he was saying on that podcast.
Yeah,
And
that's
I
cool.
read the whole thing, and I was like, damn, this is really eye-opening.
And I think that's one of the questions, like if you say like what motivates you today, and actually originally I was like nothing, like I don't do that much graffiti. I'm not super motivated. It's in my blood. I will always catch a scribe. I'll always catch a tag.
Yeah.
When someone says let's go paint or I got a spot, I'll go. I'm just not as motivated as I once was to do it.
Yeah.
I got a kid. I got a career. I got a house. I got shit. And
I got some cutty spots for you.
yeah, I'm into it. I mean, I just moved to a new area, and
I got some spots out there.
the last 3 years, I moved a little further north, and I've been scoping it out and talking to people, and they're like, yeah, we could take you places. And I was like, let's do it. I need some low impact fucking, whether it's freights or whatever, like I'm into it. But at that time of leaving San Francisco, and I had some friends who were tattooers, and they were like, are you going to do this or are you going to do that? And I was like, motherfucker, I'm going to do both. And it is one of those things where like, when you start graffiti, you will get good if you pour everything you have into it and just do it. And that's what you do. And tattooing's sort of the same way. So years later, I understood that. But at the time, when I was still in San Francisco, I couldn't remove myself from both. So
Yeah.
I was like, one's going to fuck up the other one way or another. So I kind of removed myself from it. And I said, like I said, I'd done a lot of damage with relationships, and I'd burned a lot of bridges in town. I still had a lot of friends, but it was not, I feel like it was only going to go bad places. I moved to LA, and I lived in Echo Park, which was actually my first time living in LA proper. Like, people from Northern California say, oh, you're from LA. I was like, not really. I'm from Long Beach. I'm from LA Harbor. I grew up in Orange County.
Yeah.
I wouldn't claim LA because there's real LA heads that grew up in LA.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't live in LA till later when I was an adult, and I was tattooing, and I did paint there a bit. And I liked seeing people come through town. I saw Remio and MQ paint a spot on Sunset Boulevard, and I was like, I'm getting up. I'm going to go paint because I want to be up with those dudes. And neither one of those dudes are from LA, and so it was cool. And I would paint places in LA, but again, the area that I lived in, I mean,
Echo Parque.
there's fucking 6 gangs within a stone's throw of every direction. There's fucking White Fence, there's Echo Park, there's Temple, and so like, even where I live, just physically, if you went a block that way into the underpass, just as a civilian, you want to keep your head on a swivel. And I don't know, for me, San Francisco graffiti was such a big part of my life, and the styles and the environment, it just didn't feel like home to me. I had homies in LA, and there was OSDs, And I painted some LA River spots, and I tried to stay active. I painted some freights, but it just wasn't the same for me.
Yeah.
And most of it has to do with the geography of the city. When I moved to LA, I had been without a car for 10 years. When I lived in San Francisco, I just rode my bike or took the Muni everywhere. And then I got to a certain point where I only rode my bike. Rain or shine, I would just always be on a bicycle. And when I moved to LA for the first year and a half or 2 years, I only had a bicycle, and people were tripping on me. They're like, what do you mean you don't drive? It's fucking LA. Like, where do you go? I was like, I've been to
Just
Santa
stay in my
Monica.
shit,
I've been
yeah.
to Echo Park, Silver Lake, Los Feliz, like all those areas around there. And to me, graffiti was like a foot game or a bicycle. Like when you walk, and that's how I got so many flicks and how I was able to do a zine. It's like when you walk and you're looking in all the cutty spaces, you're going to miss all that in a car.
For sure.
Even on the bus or the train, I would see something like, oh, fuck, I got to come back here because I want to hit that spot, or I want to get that train. I mean, I want to get that flick, or I want to hit that spot. And in LA, everything was so spread out. I didn't have a car for a year and a half.
Yeah.
So I just hit neighborhood shit. And in my mind, I was going to be in LA for a couple years, kind of get my tattooing chops up, and then come back to the Bay Area. My goal was always to come back to the Bay Area because I love it, and it became home, and I had my homies here. And it's almost funny. It's like when you start graffiti, you're a toy. When you start tattooing, it's the same way.
Oh, for sure.
I knew I was going to do some questionable work, and I didn't want all that floating around San Francisco. I was going to go.
You're like, I'll go fuck it up in LA.
Back to LA, where I had more family. I had more, because when you're starting out, you need like volunteers. You need people to say, "Hey, I want to do this thing," and they know that you're not top tier yet, but you're going to get there. And so I was kind of coming down here to get my chops up in that way, and it turned into 8 years where I got comfortable. I had clientele. I just got comfortable, and there's always a north and south. There's always an LA San Francisco thing. I don't love LA. I liked living there. There's aspects of it about it I liked, but I always preferred the Bay Area. One of the things that's cool about LA, and it goes for graffiti styles as well as just life, is that it's so spread out that it's easy to constantly explore new things. Like I lived there for 8 years, and someone would be like, you know about this neighborhood or this restaurant or this whatever? I'd be like, no, I've never been over there. And it's only, 30 miles away, but it takes all day, and you have to plan it out. But that was a cool aspect of it. But I just preferred the Bay Area, and so I got offered a job in Oakland, and it was really cool. By that time, I had tattooed enough where this place it was a good shop, and they wanted to have me there, and they were willing to wait for me to move there. So they really wanted me for what I had to lend talent-wise or whatever. And I was like, sick. And I still wanted to kind of be in San Francisco, even though the job was in Oakland. And 8 years later, I couldn't afford to get back into my old hood. I couldn't. Yeah. I was like, all right, Oakland's it. And and I'm glad, because I lived in Oakland for 10 years, and I fucking love Oakland, man. Like, that became... I lived in San Francisco for 10 years, and I lived in Oakland for 10 years. And Oakland kind of became what San Francisco was for me in those years, because by that time, San Francisco was a whole different cat, Even when I lived there, like I said, I lived there through one .com boom and saw a second. And so I saw vacant lots disappear, and all the pits go, and techies come in, and everybody have cameras, and everybody have phones. And it was just a whole different thing. Yeah. And there's still people that I used to write with that's still right there, and I like that. And I think, like, if what motivates me or keeps me inspired to keep going it's seeing those. Hopefully a 12 or 13 or 14-year-old will see the shit and be inspired, or somebody that's more my age will be like, oh shit, he's still around, or like
still getting it.
So I was gone for 8 years, and I would make visits, but I didn't have regular ups around San Francisco or Oakland. So when I got back to Oakland, I made sure to make plenty of trips to the city, and I get phone calls and text messages and be like, are you back, motherfucker? Because I see you now. I see mop tags on the street when I didn't for a big period of time. I'd be like, yeah, I'm back. So that was another inspiration. I was like, remember me, motherfuckers? I'm back. Yeah. And I never really got up as much as I did, but it's fun. I love that. Even now, like, if I see one of the names that I recognize from those days, oddly, I became friends with Vegan after that whole thing. We had written in the same areas. I had flicked his shit. We ran in such close circles, but we never became friends until I moved away and came back. And since then, we've painted together. We've hung out. I love seeing the guys of my generation get a throw up or get a piece or get a spot. It gives me a little fire under my ass to be like, all right, I'm gonna go out too.
Yeah.
So that's motivating, just that community aspect of I think that's good for everybody when you see an old timer or an established person still getting it. Like, I got busted in San Diego 9 years ago, and I know because my daughter wasn't born yet, and I'd gotten married, but I hadn't gone on my honeymoon. And the way that comes into play is I was in San Diego with the OSDs from down there. I was riding with Truco and Flint, who's not OSD, but he's friends.
Yeah.
And one other person. As long as I lived in Southern California, and we have crewmates down there, I never really fucked with San Diego that much. We'd go into Mexico to paint. We did like a graph con one time, and I had painted a couple easy underpasses and areas with people that were from San Diego, but I never really, it's something I don't know. So I went, I was in town. I was actually working a tattoo job, so I'm doing a guest spot. And the homies rolled through, and I was working at a shop it's owned by an old graffiti head, and he knows Truco, and he was like, oh shit. So there's all these graffiti writers in this room, and he's like, what are you guys gonna get? The owner's like, what are you guys gonna get into tonight? I was like, I'm just trying to have dinner and chill. I gotta work tomorrow. And I was like, no, that's not what's happening. So, they say they got a spot that's chill. I was like, it's gotta be chill, cause I'm here on work. I gotta be at work tomorrow.
Yeah.
Sure enough, doing throw ups on the street. And I don't know what San Diego's scene is like. I don't know if they're on top of it or not. If they're on top of it, if it's lax. I mean, we were in a spot with graffiti, so we're doing graffiti. I had finished I did like a 5-letter throw up, full name, filled it in, done it. I think I did a 2-letter, and then Flint was done. We were both watching out, and I think Trues was still writing. And I was sitting between two cars looking up and down the street, and what a cop sounds like. You know what a cop car sounds like.
Yeah.
Like if you've done this and you got any kind of street sense, I just hear the and I was like, fuck. I didn't even think. I fucking ditched my shit, stood up, and started walking the opposite direction. And I just kind of gave a whistle. I hope everyone's got their heads up, because here they come. And I also didn't know where the fuck I was, but your instincts take over. And I hear a voice, which I know is a cop, because I didn't even look. I heard the car. I turned 180 and just started walking the other direction. Mm-hmm. I heard a voice be like, hold it right there, stop what you're doing. And later on, my homie tells me that he's got his gun drawn and he's pointed at me. And my body, just muscle memory, literally went into the crouch to run. And he was like, and I was like, where the fuck am I going to go? I don't know where I am. Homie drove me here. I'm staying in another part of town.
Yeah.
I was like, I guess we're getting fucking wrapped. And they got all three of us. And I have homies in San Diego, but man, fuck, that experience put me off. I hadn't been back for a long time. I recently went back, but they had a fucking sergeant on scene. They had 5 cars. There was a fucking helicopter in the sky. I was like, where the fuck did you bring me to paint? And I'm already in my 30s, if not older, late 9 years. Yeah, I'm in my fucking 40s, dude. And I've been wrapped before, and all of us are seasoned veterans, Dude's got a flashlight. They're looking over the fence. They're looking for shit. I was like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Take us in, process us, so we can go home. I don't know what they were. And, they want
to make a spectacle of the whole thing,
Yeah, I'm not going to put people out there too much, but everyone that's involved in graffiti knows that crews, some of our crew is involved in some illegal activities that aren't graffiti. And somebody had some cash and some stuff in their pockets, and somebody was on probation. So I think that's what they were doing. They were trying to rack up more charges. And I knew one of my homies was going to jail I was going to get processed, hopefully, but I knew this was not good for them. And, you know, we went, and they do the thing where they're fucking trying to talk to you in the car. I was like, listen, man. And he looked at my ID. Oh, I'm surprised how old you are. You're still doing this shit. I was like, this is not my first rodeo. Like,
Yeah.
let's do this, you know?
Yeah.
Same thing, trying to get me, oh, we got you on camera. There's an infrared helicopter thing. Are you guys paying? You sure you don't want to change your story? And I was like, motherfucker, that's for court. Like, I know how this goes. Like, take me to jail. Like, I was like, let's get this fucking going.
I don't gotta talk about
and
anything.
once I took
just
that
process me.
once I took that attitude, they were fucking dicks. They were like,
Of course.
because they want you to do their job for them. They want you to say some shit, change your story. They'll lie to you. And this is the other thing, as a public service for young kids who either are just started or haven't been in that situation, don't ever fucking talk to the cops. Like, they can tell you, oh, we're going to let you off. We'll pull you around the corner and let you go if you tell us what you're doing. No, the fuck they're not. They're going to fucking use that against you. And you're gonna, your court date is done. You're fucking just sealed your own tomb, you know? Like, and so that's what it was. And my homie, who has also been involved with some other illegal activity, literally has a lawyer. He's like, here's my lawyer's card. Like, call this dude. And so good on him. He helped me out of there. But those fuckers, man, I got a lawyer. And a good lawyer, which isn't cheap, because he basically ran the system. You know, he postponed, he applied for extensions, just basically tried to run them out. And eventually I got misdemeanors with fines and stuff, but it took a long time and a lot of money. And like, my court date was the day I was supposed to leave for Europe to go on my honeymoon.
Damn.
And like, God bless it. I mean, my wife knew who she married. She has known me since early, those 90s days of San Francisco. And so it's funny because she knew who I left the shop with that day. And when she didn't hear from me and my phone went off, she didn't think I was fucking running around, or she didn't think I was up to some shit. She knew that I was in fucking jail. Which, it's sad, but it's also funny. And it's, you know, she's down. She knew who she married. Yeah. And then when I told her when the court date was, she was like, oh, hell no. Like, you can't appear. And I was like, no, I got a lawyer. I'm doing it. Like, cause that's fucking relationship. You can't fucking not go on your honeymoon cause you got a fucking graffiti charge. So, I'm glad. I mean, that's the test, right? We had just been married. We hadn't gone on our honeymoon yet. And I was like, listen, this is what you got. Like, but she's down, and she's still to this day, well, like, you know, I'm a grown ass adult with a kid, and I'm married, and OSDs will be like, hey, we're having a meeting in Tijuana. Are you coming? I was like, and she's like, go. You know what I mean? Go. Don't get arrested across the fucking border. Come back. Yeah. Do your thing. And I was like, thank you. Like, I mean, that's a good relationship. I mean, it's not just about graffiti. It's about anything. Like, she supports me. She knows I'm an adult. She knows I know what to do.
Right. She has faith in you.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But I love, that's the thing. OSD is a tight crew. I've heard it as much about everybody else that did work in San Francisco as me. I hear young graffiti kids that I run into be like, you know Nesta? Can you get Nesta to hit this up? Like, and I'll hit him up. I'll be like, hey man, this kid's really fucking foaming at the mouth. Can you just? And he's like, I don't know. Like, you know, he's like, maybe if I knew him or whatever. But like, I appreciate that. I appreciate all the guys in that crew and all the work that they've done and all the work that they continue to do. We got some new dudes and some younger dudes that are fucking crushing it, and I appreciate it. And you know, sometimes it makes me feel like a fucking old heel that I'm not as active. But it's the same thing. Like, those guys are like, you dudes were the inspiration for us. Like, when we saw what you guys have done, hitting the streets in San Francisco or whatever. And in recent years, there's that gas station on Divisadero. There was a big chrome Outsiders across that roof ledge. And one of the newer guys who I hadn't even met was a part of that. And I saw it on my way to work one day. I was working in San Francisco. And I didn't know they did it. Like, they'd just done it the night before.
Oh, sick.
So I saw my own crew in big letters, and I was like, fuck, that's such a good feeling to know there's another generation keeping it going. And I literally pulled off because I know, I was like, if you don't flick it now, it might not be there.
Yeah.
Pulled across the street, and I'm across the street trying to get an angle of what it is.
Yeah.
And I see somebody else who I don't know because I haven't met him flicking the thing. It was a new crewmate who did the thing, and he's like, what's up? You taking a picture of that? Are you right? I was like, yeah, I write Maseo. And he's like, ah! And he just started laughing, and we like gave hugs and shit. Cause
shit.
He had just come to town to kind of like represent the crew and be like, I'm down, I'm new, I'm going to do a thing.
What are the odds? That's such a great
and that's
story.
And that's how I met him. And I was like,
well, that's a good way to meet.
yeah. And we always do. It's nice because Jay, who's still the fucking captain of the ship, and he runs a tight crew, and everyone gets voted in unanimously. There can't be any hesitations and we're not a big crew. I never wanted a nationwide thing where there's people in other states that I don't know.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I treat that like family, and if I can't personally vouch for that person, I don't know them.
Right.
If I haven't sat down and eaten with them and painted with them, then I don't need to be associated with them in a crew.
Yeah.
Because I think that means a lot. And we were very selective, and we, last time we had a meeting, it's a lot for X amount of people to stop their lives and get off of work and fly and be a place. And,
for sure.
It was fucking fun, dude. We painted multiple things in San Diego. We went across the border. We got an Airbnb. We fucked around down there. TJ's dope. The graffiti scene down there is awesome. There's a crew, HEM, that were great hosts, and they're sort of linked up with some of the homies, and they're just crushing Tijuana and Mexico and San Diego. It's fun. I don't keep up on a lot of graffiti current events, and it's fun to be. I feel like you can go anywhere in the world as long as somebody vouches for you or puts you on, like, hey, go hang with this dude, and all of a sudden you got homies and family in Amsterdam or fucking Spain or like wherever you are, and that's what I like about graffiti. There's a lot of shit there's a lot of downsides, there's a lot of jail sentences and restitutions and fucking street fights and like, but I mean, it's
there's
all,
definitely a lot of ups too.
You can't have one without the other, You also have a community of writers around the world that you have a common interest in. As long as you're cool, like, they'll go show you some shit if you're cool and you come through with good graffiti. It's awesome.
Let's transition into some of the user submitted questions.
Sure.
So we can
and if you have any more of these questions that I didn't hit, please get at me. I know
word
these things happen in tangents and go on organically.
Dude.
So
yeah, exactly.
Afterwards I'll be like, oh, I didn't talk about whatever, or like,
bro, you have no idea how many people have gotten a message. Oh, that one thing I couldn't figure it out. I remember now. Yeah,
I mean, and I could go through and hit up every homie or shout out everybody, but they know who they are. All my crew, all the OSDs, all the A teams, still lifelong friends. Like, I don't have very many other. I've been into tattooing. I've been into other interests, and graffiti is one of those rare things where I've kept friendships for 30 years. Like, I have homies that I met in 1995. It's 2025. We still call each other or talk or check up or see how they're doing. And like,
yeah,
I mean, that's cool. I think that's rare.
Yeah, hell yeah. So one of the first questions, Cumrag says, which side of the bridge goes harder?
I love me some Cumrag.
And shout out to Cumrag, because he's the one that actually was like, yo, you should have Maseo on the podcast.
Yes.
And then he was like, I'm going to link you up. And I was like, please do.
And he is one of those dudes who I consider a kid still. He's a grown man. But he's the different generation. And I've been tattooing him for a lot of years now, and that's how that came about. I think he hit me up in Oakland. I don't know if he knew or if we just came to it in a discussion. I don't know which came first, but
yeah, I think he told me that he was getting tattooed by you, and he figured it out later.
Yeah, I think it was just organic. And, and that was cool. I mean, I could spot a rider generally still. Like, we'll be walking around, I'll see some dude with like some silver on the tip of his shoes and some stains around his pocket, and I'm like, that kid's a rider right there. Yeah,
for sure.
But he's awesome, and he's kind of also put a fire under my ass and made me hip to a generation of kids I didn't know. Yeah. And he's got a great story, man. we've had a lot of conversations with a lot of hours of tattooing and which side of the bay? Well, Oakland. I mean, I'm sorry right now.
Yeah.
It's Oakland. And that's just things ebb and flow. You know, San Francisco had its day. There's not San Francisco, graffiti in San Francisco that I like and I respect, but Oakland's a fucking Mad Max world, and it has been since the pandemic. And like,
Yeah.
I mean, people thought San Francisco was a playground in the 90s. Like, and everyone that's come on has said it. I've never seen, even when you think about like Dream and TDK and like this era of Oakland, now is more. It's like, you never saw buildings from fucking top to bottom, end to end. Every square inch has a fucking throwaway, whether it's a floater, it's a roller, like people are rappelling off the fucking pillars on the overpasses, like.
Yeah.
And the thing that I like is the tenacity. If it gets buffed, they just do it again.
Yeah.
And I think someone, maybe it was Aker, mentioned like, that's great advice. Like, I used to do that in San Francisco a lot. I got a little territorial. Like, if I had a spot and it got buffed, I would paint it again. I was like, I'm going to outlast you. Like, I'm going to hit that spot till you get tired of buffing it. Or like,
sick.
Taking spots back or hitting, like, that's, Oakland is, I'd have to say Oakland is the side of the bay right now that is hitting a little bit harder, which I think is cool. I mean, I think it should inspire everybody. I mean, not everybody has Oakland conditions. Cops aren't going to look at you and be like, I got murders to fucking go to. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and that's the weird thing. Like, in the 90s, I remember one of the homies in OSD lived in Oakland, and that was when Oakland was getting murder capital of the year after year. Like, there was somebody who put out a calendar that was like, every year you could fucking mark the murders off, and then they made it a fucking game to tally how many fucking murders that city would get.
Crazy.
And I mean, thank goodness it's not that, but you know, Oakland's still as grimy as it has ever been. And for graffiti, that's a plus. I mean, if you got cops rolling by you and you could paint in the day, and people are pushing full pieces and straight letters and shit in spots that they would normally just tag, I'm here for it. I think it's awesome.
Hell yeah. Fuckbro.99 says, what's your favorite marker?
For a long time, it was just a simple silver. I used to just call them silver shake-ups, just the silver pilot.
Like the PX30s?
No, a round tib that we would smash out.
Oh, okay.
So that was one of the things that you take that round, just the regular round nib, and I would use the blade or edge of I used to use the edge of the cap and squash it so it was even bigger. But that is a good marker too. That's probably my second. Just a regular silver pilot or the chisel tip. Those are great. But I also love mops. A little mop with a good black ink. I mean, it used to always be T-grade marsh, and it had to be. And now there's so many. I mean, I'm excited to use this, but there's so many people that concoct crazy ass shit that like I used to love Griffin. That's like one of those like the literal shoe with the dabber. Yeah. Like not pouring into another, but just using it straight out of the fucking shoe store. Yeah. It had such a nice flow with that stick, and it would get so drippy. Yeah. I didn't
wizard
care.
Wand.
Yeah, I didn't care if it wasn't the most indelible. Like, it was kind of a dye, you know, a stain.
Yeah.
It wasn't as opaque or as black as marsh, but it was fun as fuck. Those are good. Yeah. Griffin, a standard mop, or a silver shake-up, I think.
Word. Outer Sour says favorite letter.
Probably S.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, S or E, I think that there's so much variation in both of those. Mm-hmm. I love M's, of course. I mean, but that's the thing. I've written the same word, so, you know, sometimes we'll do outsider spell outs or some other thing, but it's pretty. And sometimes I'll hit up a piece for a homie or something, but I'm pretty much always fucking with the same five. So I would say S or E. Yeah. One of those two.
Can of Beans says, what is your rider's Mount Rushmore?
First of all, the usernames on all these questions.
Bro, that's hilarious. Yeah. Well, Can of Beans actually writes beans.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
nice,
yeah.
Nice.
He rolls with this kid Prophet. They get up a lot.
That's one of the things I was going to mention, and I wrote down. And you've talked about it before, not only pedestrian graffiti, but I love, like, Cumrag. Yeah. I love a fucked up name. Like, I've seen Finger Bang, Ghost Farts, Oat Milk.
Oh, yeah, Oat Milk. I've met that kid.
anything that's like a fucked up word, if you can take that and own it and make it good, I think that's like, I think that takes character, and it tells me you have a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And like a little bit of humility. Like if you're going to call yourself some shit like,
Yeah.
you know, if there's something with poop or penis or fucking cum, like, come on, you got to have a little bit of a self-esteem to rock that and do it well. Like I love Cumrag. I love KQED. I love, you know, anything that's a funny ass. It's a good little, but Mount Rushmore, meaning like,
Name
writers.
4 writers that you're thinking.
Oh man, of course there's people today that are doing good, but I always think back to that era for me. I mean, it sounds like old hat, but like KR is a person who's had ultimate influence on me, both as a person and as a writer. He brought that New York thing to San Francisco.
Yeah.
I mean, Mops. Mops filtered. I don't know who brought like that silver mop to San Francisco, if it wasn't KR, but it got filtered to me through those channels. You know, like from KR to Barry, and maybe Evade. You know, there's like a trickle down. Maybe it might have been Evade who like actually said, "This is what you put in the silver to make it better. This is the mop that we." You know what I mean? Like this is what the can's called. Like, and that came from that. I think KR is up there. I probably wrote this down because it's one of those things like once you're on mic, you're going to kick yourself in the ass for not mentioning. Twist was always really influential to me. And that's another thing. I met him really early on as a person in MoMA. He was painting an installation there of like all the characters that were floating. It was maybe on a red background.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about, yeah.
I would gone in for the day and that section was cordoned off, and he was up on a scaffolding doing it.
Yeah.
I literally had a black book with me, and he saw me hanging out. He's like, "What's up? You want to?" And he didn't know me from anybody. He's like, "You want to come check it out?" And I was like, "Fuck yeah, I do." So I came back there. We talked a little bit. He hit up my book. I told him I did a zine. I still have the piece of paper in a notebook. He wrote down his name in his hand. He put Barry McGee. He put his P.O. box, and he put his fucking phone number to somebody he had just met who was looking at his shit on the wall. Because he said, he said, "Yeah, send a zine to my P.O. box." And I was like, all right. And he hit up my book like multiple times. And it was like, and that was like another great right place, right time, where like since then, you know, I actually asked Vegan because he works with him, and it's like, does he still have the same P.O. box? He's like, I'm pretty fucking sure. If you got those digits, give him a holler. And so I was like, that's crazy. Like, how is somebody who is so influential and so down, so accessible, and such a normal dude? I think those two are definitely up there. And then MQ. I mean, it's kind of the things that everyone says, but it's true, man. Like the roll downs that MQ was doing, the rollers, the consistency, and then that shit was just a stamp. Like, that's something like why I put like people like KR and MQ there, is that's the stuff that I loved, and that's the stuff I always related to. I will try to do a piece, and I will try to get a little wild with it. I'm into letter connections and all the bits and pieces that go into piecing, but it's people like that, and even more like I forgot that I had mentioned like Dean and Doug, SP1, Jones, Fly ID, someone who has a really clean straight letter that is just readable from a mile away. Yeah. And when they do something, you could be 3 blocks away on the bus or the train and be like, exactly that's who it is. Yeah. Bennett was the same way for a while in the city. Yeah. Seeing those stamps was hugely influential to and that's what I always wanted with my tag. I wanted my tag and a simple or a throw up to be readable from blocks away, and before you even get up to it, know that's a Maseo tag, or that, you know. So that was something that was super influential. So it's those kind of people. It's probably KR, Barry, it's MQ, stuff like that. I did really appreciate Ty after a while, and all those MSK guys, they caused a lot of ruffled a lot of feathers, but like the shit that all those AWRs were doing was sick, and it reminded me of my childhood, like seeing that stuff growing up. Yeah.
Shy 0174. What are some of your favorite spots to hit And they're also saying, they said, listening from Canada.
Favorite spots to hit.
Yeah.
I was never a really big climber, but I do love rooftops. Like I never did heavens, but I loved urban city rooftops. And that was the thing that was a bummer about Ty and the way he got killed. That never even fucking occurred to me. I was worried about falling. I wasn't worried. I did have another story where I painted a sketchy spot in San Francisco and we had to go. And I think ignorance is bliss is the kind of thing. If you don't think about it too long, you're just going to do it.
Yeah.
If you overanalyze it and you get that fear in you, you're never going to do it. But we had to climb. We climbed like some people's back, like patio balconies. Like we had to go across balcony to rooftop to get there. And I was like, man, if any one of those motherfuckers woke up and were a gun owner, we probably would have been in trouble. But then when we got up there was a corrugated metal roof that we had to walk across, and there was a gap. And when we looked, there was a 2x4 like every 20 feet. Like that building was not code. That whole thing was flexi. Like the whole situation was sketchy. But I mean, I think that's the thing. Ignorance is bliss, right? Like,
yeah.
I like runners. I like rooftops, and then the really low cutty spots. Like if I can catch a tag in a gap or a utility box or something that's gonna run. Like I've always had the long game in mind. Like cutty spots, I think.
Okay, word. Yeah. Cage Goulding says, if you couldn't write graffiti anymore, what would you do to fill that void?
I mean, I guess just art, what I'm doing now. Like, I draw a lot, I paint a lot, I tattoo as a profession. I mean, I got a lot of other things that would keep me busy. I don't know what would keep me from doing graffiti. I mean, people lose limbs and do graffiti out of wheelchairs. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like some mythical, like, graffiti was wiped from the face of the earth, because that's probably the only thing that would keep me from doing it if it never existed or people couldn't figure out how to do it. Yeah, but I have plenty of things in my life. Like you said, with a I don't know if it's ADD or OCD or touch of the tism, but I can tweak out on a thing, dude. Give me an interest and I'll fucking deep dive it and be like the collector of that thing for a long, I did it with bicycles for a long time because I used to cycle, and I messengered very shortly. I was not a bike messenger, but I gave it a try.
It's a hard job, dude.
It's awesome and it's fun. It's fucking hard. I thought like I said, I rode a bicycle through the city for 10 years. There was one circumstance in my life where I had a year where I didn't have much to do and I was getting paid. And so I was like, I'm going to try bike messengering. I started Monday, rode with a dude half the day. After lunch, he's like, all right, you're on your own. I was like, shit, all right, let's do it. By Wednesday, I could barely get out of bed because my quads were so sore. And I had rode everywhere all the time. Like, that's my form of transportation. But the way the pace, if you want to make money and like what you're doing, after that, it was like conditioning. After Wednesday, I was good. But
yeah,
I was surprised. I thought I was in good shape. I thought I rode a bike a lot. And I met a lot of good riders that way. I was better friends with Orphan and a bunch of other people after that.
Sick.
It's a sick community. I don't know if it's still going. I seriously doubt it. But I see cats every once in a while in San Francisco that look like they're messengers. I don't know if that's just fashion role play or if they're doing it.
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I feel like now with the digital age, it's like you just send all your documents,
Yeah, there'll always be, maybe they got it now, but that was the thing then. Like, those dudes that were veterans, like Orphan and stuff, they had legal jobs. And I worked for a passport expediter. And so things that have to go round trip to courthouses, they need physical stamps.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There might always be that, like passport expediting, they need to physically have the documents. They need to physically have your passport and your ID.
Yeah.
And I would run to all the consulates and the passport agency. That was fun.
Yeah, that's probably the only.
Yeah, it's only in those because
breed.
everything else is going to be sent digitally.
Right. Firebomb. You ever heard of that guy?
No.
Really, really sick artist. He does kind of like the Seder piece here in the shop. He does like hand cut wood and paint.
That's great.
Pretty sure he's Lord's.
Oh, okay.
But he says, what are a couple pieces that you've done or a spot that you're very proud of?
Who was it? was that I liked the piece. It was that I painted on my own, and I painted it Christmas Eve night. I think all the writers, like, that's another thing that civilians don't realize, that writers are constantly aware of what's going on in the world, and like a night like Christmas Eve, a night when all the civilians are indoors and all the police are on weird details where there's less of them, they got to work. Those are the nights, right? So there was a piece along Caltrains where I did a roller. It was probably one of the bigger things I did, and it had the different suits of cards in the fill.
Oh, sick.
And I think I wrote like Rounder's Game. I'd like seen that movie about cards and gambling and shit, so I just like put it in a piece. Like there was 4 suits of cards, and they were like shapes that were filling it, and I rolled it out, and it was big as fuck, and it was along the lines. And I remember at the time, like I said, when I was younger, there was someone that wrote Hem, H-E-M. Later on, they wrote something else, and I think they were in Drugs Crew.
Sick.
But I had a simple throw up or something there, and they painted over me, and they painted in a way where I could see, it wasn't filled in solid.
Okay.
And I could see my thing through their thing, and so that roller piece was like, oh, hell no. And I didn't know the person, I didn't have beef, but I was just like, in my rule set, if you go over somebody, fill it in so you can't see their shit or burn it, or like, even if it's a throw up over a throw up, like,
it's got to be a better throw up, solid filled.
So I could see my shit coming through, so I was a little bit irked. And so I took it back with the biggest roller I could do, and I was like, there's no way you're going to come back at me unless you fucking... I mean, you could, but it'd be a fucking Fate MQ style. It'd have to be huge.
Yeah.
And then years later, through Mark Cross, actually, who was a tattooer, who was a graffiti writer, he used Drugs Crew, and he was friends with THR, and there was a thing, an LA exhibit where they had graffiti in a museum or something, and Mark was in it, and he was like, hey, you want to come down? And I was like, yeah, what are you guys doing? He's like, we're painting in the fucking MoMA. It wasn't MoMA or Contemporary, or I can't remember which one it was. Mocha, maybe. And it was the trippiest scene I'd ever seen. There's a security guard in there. He let me in the side door. It's after hours in a museum, and it's a bunch of dudes with 40s smoking blunts inside the museum with paint that the museum had provided them. And Barry basically had one of his street exhibits, outdoor, indoor installations, and he gave Drugs Crew a corner to just let them do their
whatever they want,
weird anti-style, ugly fucking shit. And I mean, I love those guys, and I'm friends with Mark, but like, that's what it is. I mean, that's what it is. It's this anti-style thing. And I was like, what the fuck? And that kid who wrote
was there.
He was there. And Mark was like, hey, this is Maseo, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, oh, hey man, I wanted to mention this. Like, and he brought it up. I had forgot about it. I forgot. I love that piece, and that's like my answer for that. But it wasn't until he said that I remembered that there was something under it. And I was like, hey, man, that's cool. I hope you didn't take that shit personally. He's like, no, you too. And I'm glad that it didn't set off a beef or whatever. And I was like, no, dude, that's, I mean, it's graffiti, dude. Like, if you tried to take it and you didn't, I took it back. It wouldn't have been like that. I mean, A-Team and ESL had friendly rallies, or like Mission Street from Cesar Chavez to here. Who could do the most, you know? And that shit's fun. It's a good competitive way to get going. But that's cool. I like it when people can say, I did this. I mean, like the freight things. I don't know freights, and I've painted a couple freights. I probably fucked it up, or I hopefully didn't make someone's yard hot. I know I didn't paint over anything, and I went with somebody who took me there. So, I mean, that's something. I mean, that's the thing where I think if you love a thing, whether it's graffiti or whatever, you should be constantly learning and evolving. Maybe that's the next thing for me. Maybe I get better at freights and knowing the ins and outs of freight culture.
Sick.
Yeah.
Czech wants to know tags, throw-ups, or letters.
Oh, man. Coming from Czech? I will say... That's hard because I think it's always letters, because it should be the basis of everything. I think if you know and are comfortable with letter forms, you can make a good tag, you can make a good throw up, you can make a good piece. I wanted to say throw ups because that sounded like There was a thing that Evade hit up a long time ago that said villains do fill-ins.
Sick.
And I love that so good because I was like, there's something about bombers, you know? Like,
yeah.
And sometimes now, like, a lot of the bombing I see, I can appreciate it for its saturation. If I see somebody up and I've noticed them, I'm like, oh, they're putting in work. But I really appreciate a well-crafted throw-up. Like, if I look at it and I'll be like, ooh, that probably took them like 30 seconds because it's put together so well and everything flows and it's legible and you know who it is. Like, you know, throw-up's bombing. If it's so crazy you can't read it, then, like, what's the point? Like,
yeah. Oh, I agree.
I say letters or throw-ups. I think if you got that, you're going places and you could figure out the other things.
You mentioned it over before, but I want to just kind of elaborate, I guess. That one guy, Sam, says, do you like scribes? And if so, what's your favorite tool for scribes?
I do like scribes.
You got that thing on you?
I do. And this came from my...
a classic adapter.
Yeah.
My wife has that one.
That came from the homie.
That's literally her favorite, the exact same one.
It, I got an S and an O in my name, and I don't want to do them square all the time.
I got the Jabber scribe.
Yeah.
Always love
so
when
there
people
was a
pull out
period
their
where
scribes.
I would make them like a box because...
That's a carbide tip, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because doing a curve is hard. Doing a smooth curve.
If you hold... I've found out that with carbide tips, you tend to like... Yeah, I know exactly. Yeah. So if you know how when you hold it like a pen, over time it gets hella dull, right? Yeah. So if you hold it straight on with medium pressure, you can get really good curves.
Yeah. Yeah, I've figured it out to where I do love scribes. And I've always been with that touch of the tism, like had to classify.
I love that. This comes up a lot.
Classify or compartmentalize things. And for a while, I was like, I would get bummed when people said graffiti was art because they do that thing where like, I like twist, I like the screws. Why can't you do something like that? I was like, fuck that. I want to do vandalism. Like, I don't want something, like, the point isn't to make your world more beautiful necessarily.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm here to fuck shit up.
Yeah, so I kind of wrestled with scribes and Etchbath. I was selective where I did it, and I still am. Mm-hmm. If there's it's a check-in. If you go to a fucking restaurant and there's a fucking sign-in on the mirror, I'm going to get in there.
Oh, for sure.
Even if it's a small mom and pop place, because it's like, well, they've let it run. They don't care about the fucking mirror in the bathroom. It's a piece of mirror. I did scribe some fucking, it used to be a dry cleaner. And again, I was fucking drunk out of my own mind. I might have had one of those big grinder tips. I just fucking went like this. I'm surprised I was drunk. I'm surprised I didn't fucking break the window. I just planted it and just went like just the biggest, and it wasn't even a good looking tag.
Yeah.
And then I was just drunk walking up the street, and later on I was like, ooh, that's kind of harsh. Like, A, it's ugly and it's going to be there forever. And B, that's just some fucking like mom and pop dry cleaner.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. I love scribes. I love vandalism. I like Etchbath a lot. In fact, I recently found a really skinny, it's like skinnier than this with a little dime tip that I had mixed up, and it was still in there.
Oh, shit.
And I was like, oh my God, this thing is like, it's weird discolored, and I thought it would have eaten the container already. I went and touched it, and it got like better with age. It did that thing where it smoked. Like,
oh, yeah.
It was like
so
smoking.
His shit smokes.
This one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And after just doing one, that kind of got me. I was like, people don't fuck with etch as much, right? I mean, is it because the charges got so hot about it, or?
I mean, my homies fuck with etch.
Okay.
I fuck with etch, but like it's one of those things.
You remember when like it first came out in the Bay, like everybody was etching, and
it became harder to get.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't realize the difference between etch bath, etch cream, and now some of it is actually you need industrial licenses in order to even get it. Mm-hmm. So there is that, but yeah.
I like that. Well, I like one of the things I liked about graffiti and still do is the craft of it. So if you're out there and you want to explore Etchbath, figure it out.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's all out there on the internet now, and you can just buy that shit from a supply company, but experiment. Figure out what works best.
Yeah.
Maybe you can make it burn longer, or maybe you can make it fucking stain and burn. Like, that's fucking dope.
Yep. Yeah. I like this question, and I don't know. I apologize if I pronounce this bad. There's someone walking by. Actually, they have their icon, Sauer, Sauer. Well, his Instagram is S4UER, right? But and I like this question a lot. He says, "Who are some no names that you remember?" Obviously, there's people like Twist, KR, Dean, TMF, whatnot. But who are some no names? Maybe not the most popular person, but someone that you're like, oh, dude, I remember this dude killing it.
I mean, if there are no names, I don't remember. No.
That's fair.
No, okay. I mean, lesser knowns like there was this, and it just made an impression. There was this dude, Open CF, who used to do whiteout tags everywhere, and it was like that cutty thing, like Orphan, where they were everywhere. They were like on the fucking coin slot on the muni bus, like on the dude's visor, like on a cash register, and just tiny and just tucked away and everywhere. And one of the other dudes who, I mean, people know, but Heart 101. Yeah. When he first came out, doing an artsy thing, and I was like, what the? Same thing. I was like, what the fuck is that? Is that a ship? Like, is that a heart? What is that? Mm-hmm. But then he got up more and more and more, and I was like, okay. And then I met him personally, and he was one of the first like openly gay graffiti dudes I knew. Yeah. I didn't know like Ear Snot or anything like that yet, and he had some beef with some other crew. And I remember it was a house party, and some dudes rolled up to him, and I think he grabbed a bike lock, or he was like down for it. He's like, all right, let's do this. Sick. And I think he fought multiple people. And then afterwards I was like, what the fuck, dude? And he's like, dude, I'm a gay dude who grew up in DC. You think I haven't fucking fought for my That's sick. My ground before? And I was like, all right, respect. And I didn't always love the graffiti that he did. He got super political, which I'm okay with. I like that. But he was a cool dude. And I remember there was a squat on Market Street, old movie theater that was abandoned. And him and some of the scam punks and some people that were involved in A-Team basically took it over, cut a lock, put a chain on it. And it was a cool-ass community spot for a while. They opened up the front doors and did breakfast and orange juice for street people, for homeless.
Whoa, that's cool.
And that was shit that they dumpstered. They had kickball games inside. There was art shows. They had like cooking facilities set up. And it was some kids that were homeless, some squatters. And he was just on a different tip. He was on and he still is.
For the people type shit.
Yeah, and I appreciate that.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing I think that happened in San Francisco that maybe wouldn't have been accepted or happened in a lot of other cities, scenes. So, I don't know. Those two come to mind.
Word.
Yeah.
Pretty much everything is all things that we've covered.
Sweet.
So I'm out of questions, unless there's anything else that you'd like to add in.
I think that's it. I do like the last meal question, and I feel like
I always
at
forget
some
that.
point,
Fuck. Sorry, yes.
At some point, I would have just said a burrito or whatever.
Yeah.
But my wife is a wonderful cook and a foodie, and like super into cuisine. Everywhere we travel, when we went to Paris, we went to Amsterdam, we've been to Morocco.
Nice.
She's always got the spot. She's like, we got to go here. There's a Michelin star place here. There's a
she's
bakery
like
here.
Yeah. So,
and I grew up pretty grimy. I grew up eating sugar cereals and making fucking sugar sandwiches and shit.
Yeah, the biggest thing, obviously with previous generation, my generation, whatnot, is that we all had a lot of red 40, which is actually the food coloring that is most consistent in kids with ADHD and autism.
Really?
Yes. So red 40 is specifically the reason why.
I was a processed sugar food junkie for a while.
Oh, yeah.
And then,
fruit by the foot.
Through meeting my lady, she has definitely introduced me to a healthier eating and a wonderful cuisine. And, we've been to there's a lot of fucking Michelin star restaurants in the Bay Area.
For sure.
For my most recent birthday, she took me to this place called Ad Hoc up in Napa. It's this chef, Thomas Keller. And I've been to a couple of his spots. I've been to Chez Panisse, State Bird Provisions. I was fortunate enough to have a friend who was a chef there. So I think my answer would be I would just go to a Michelin star restaurant with a badass chef I didn't know and be like, make me something. Because in my experience, like, I have foods that I like, there's certain Mexican foods that are comfort foods, and that, it would definitely be awesome, but I would like to have something that somebody who is really passionate about cooking just made for me,
Sick.
Yeah, I think that's it. I would go to some fancy ass restaurant, and it's funny because I actually heard this through a tattoo podcast, because one person was criticizing the other person's like taste in Michelin star. They're like, why do you want to be in there with those fucking uppity ass like rich white folks or whatever? And he's like, that's why I want to be there. He's like, I'm covered in tattoos. I'm a fucking grimy ass dude, and I have the same money that they do, and I'm gonna enjoy a nice meal. And when he put it that way, I was like, hell yeah, dude, I want to be the fly in the ointment. I mean, I'm not gonna go in there up in a baggy hoodie spotter with paint and be a fucking attract attention. But I think that more people should not self-restrict themselves from things that they don't feel like they should be involved in. You know what I mean?
No, I agree.
Experience that shit. Like I felt that way about traveling for a long time. For me, I was very anti-European, like being Mexican and native, and I was very like
colonizers.
Yeah, I was like, fuck them. Why do I want to go see that shit? Like,
but then you go there and you're like, okay, well,
I
agree with you, because I'm Guatemalan, and I grew up really kind of politically like, I fucking hate white people, and like, I mean, obviously I grew up with like white friends that I don't consider that are actually white, but now that I've traveled to Europe, and I'm just like, okay, well, first of all, any modern day European here didn't colonize me, right? This is like a different thing. Sure, there's descendants and whatnot, but
I mean, I think
there's a beauty to it in its own way, man. Like really checking that shit out is really fucking cool.
Yeah, I think it's the colonization, it's the systems, it's the governments that did those things, and then so that was my thing with travel. For a long time, I was North America, South America. I want to see that shit. I want to see shit that relates to me. I traveled all around the United States. I was like, but I didn't want to fuck with, I think it was that like chip on my shoulder. I was like, fuck those colonizers. Why do I want to go to some place that Britain colonized and like fucked up? What about all the things on our continent that are neglected, like the cultures that were as developed and contributed as much arts and things. But then I went, then I went to Paris, I went to the south of France, I went to England, I went to Amsterdam. Morocco was awesome and a trip.
And I think a lot of people don't realize too that like a lot of the colonization comes from above. Yeah. There's still the I don't want to say peasants, but like, you know what I'm saying? The common people.
Yeah. And those come in all colors and shapes and nationality.
Exactly.
There's always, it's class and status.
Sure.
More than region or color. And yeah, I mean, I think that's it. Once I traveled, and you've talked about traveling with graffiti a lot. I think anytime you travel, I come back super inspired. It like really
sick.
I keep a sketchbook. I'll draw things. I'll take pictures of things that I see, and they don't even have to be graffiti, but they will inspire everything for those next couple months. I get super jazzed. I say, I got all these fucking ideas. I want to do this. I want to do that.
Yeah.
And then if you,
it's a different perspective.
Can save your fucking dollars and treat yourself to that, I think it really enriches your life. Like I know people that just work in bars and they just work regular jobs, but they make a point. I have a friend right now in Alaska, and that person has been to so many different countries, and she always makes it a point to like, yeah, I just live in the city and I work at this bar, but I'm going to go see the fucking world. And like, that's a priority. And I think if you make that a priority in life, it's super fucking enriching. Like
100%.
It'll change your tags. It'll change your throw-ups. It'll change your art. It'll change your perspective to see how other people do things. And that's how other people tag, how other people get up, or just, culture. It's cool.
Yeah.
I think travel is super essential.
I completely agree. I've said it time and time again, man. Fucking peanut butter jelly sandwiches and tortillas with fucking butter.
Just to save that money.
Save up so I can dip.
Yeah. That's good.
Sick, man. Well, fuck. You know, like I said, I'm out of questions. I'm glad we did touch base on a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else that you might want to add?
I think that's it. I think we've done it.
Sick.
Yeah, I'll probably think of stuff later.
Yeah.
That's always
It always happens.
That's always the way.
All right, word, man. Well, do you want to possibly say, you know, where people can find you if they're interested, or if, you know, they want to get a tattoo by you?
I don't actually.
Okay.
I thought about this a lot. I don't need to be a secret, but I like it. I got in this to have an alter ego and to be a little bit anonymous. And I know I do other things now, but it's not that hard. I mean, search hashtags, look at photos. If you want to get a tattoo by me, I'm sure you can find out. I would appreciate it, but I also don't do graffiti tattoos, so it's not. I mean, I'd do a throw up, and I've seen some really cool stuff. But
have you ever tatted a Maseo on someone?
No. That would be weird, maybe. No, I haven't really done any. I haven't done any graffiti tattoos. I think I mentioned before, like, sometimes I'll definitely compartmentalize things. Like, I do paintings and drawings that have nothing to do with graffiti or tattoo work, but that's kind of separate. Like, if someone asked me to be in an art show, I'll think about the context. Like, if it was a graffiti art show, I would do a graffiti piece. If it was a tattoo art show, I would do a tattoo piece. Yeah. But then there's stuff I just do that comes out of my head that I just want to make, and that's more of like, I guess, just fine art. And tattooing's a weird thing where I tattoo what other people want on them, and that's really satisfying to me, to do a good job at drawing or designing something that person wants to wear. I don't need to see my name on a person. That's weird. Yeah. I know that I did the tattoo. It's almost like that same anonymity where, like, I don't need to sign it. I don't need them to know. It doesn't have to say Maceo or my name at the bottom of the tattoo. It just needs to go out there and be a dope tattoo or a good piece of art. And if people appreciate that, then they do their homework and figure out where it came from and come see me. Sick. Yeah. That's it.
Okay, word.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so as far as...
I have thought maybe I would start Instagram because I have such a deep file of graffiti photos, or a Flickr. So if that happens, maybe you could put it out there for me. But
there's a description with this podcast, so even if you do it at a later time, I can always add it back on.
Maybe I'll do that, because I have been, as I get older, I've been wondering what to do with all this stuff that nobody sees. And I was going to hook up with the homie Wesk and let him sort of cherry pick those photos if he wanted to put some in the zine. Sick. But then I thought, well, maybe I'll just take them all and do something myself. But
yeah, I'll hook you up with some... we'll talk about it in a second.
Yeah. We'll figure it
out. Okay, word. Yeah. If you're coming off of the search and you just discovered this podcast, you can find me... Bay Area Graffiti. That's Bay_area_graffiti on Instagram. If you're interested in my personal graffiti, it's What's Your Name, but name spelled Naym, which is just mine backwards. Check out the YouTube. I have been pushing a lot of graffiti videos on there, all my travels and the last 10 years of my life, and any new spots that I've been painting. So I've been doing a lot of graffiti video editing. So that's been a huge push. Check the Flickr. There's over 15,000 pictures over the last 15 years on there that you can archive and check out and download and use and steal from me.
Yeah, I've been losing some hours on Flickr lately.
Yeah.
I didn't realize.
Flickr's tight, man.
Yeah.
And then what else? Once again, just because this is my job and I need money. If you need stickers, holler at your boy for stickers. I do sticker printing.
Keep an eye out. If you see some Maceo bubble graffiti stickers around the town, you know who to hit up, because these are dope.
Yeah. You guys can head on over to leftcoastsigns.com and you can upload your artwork if you already have it ready, or at least, just shoot me an email. And then I can help you, even if you have just a fucking Sharpie sketch on a piece of paper, I can turn it into a sticker for you. So holla at your boy. Other than that, man, fucking, thanks so much for coming onto the show. I really appreciate, this time that we've had learning about your story and, so much history from San Francisco and OC and stuff like that. It's really been a pleasure to kick it with you.
Thanks for having me.
Fuck yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for listening to this episode, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.
What is this rush thing? What is the rush that you get from it?
The ultimate rush, nothing can beat it, no drugs, no nothing.
Are you the kind of person who goes up on those signs on the freeway?
Yeah, more than anyone.